You should not be here. Gu sat on the boat. Everything in the cabin was very familiar. Even the scent of the makeup closely resembled the scent of willow catkins. This was the stuff that Yao Yu liked to use. Upon smelling the catkins, people would end up thinking of her. I know. The pipa in her lap suddenly felt much heavier, causing Yao Yu to hold it tighter. Her slender fingers were exerting so much force on the wood that they were turning white. Her breathing showed that she both understood and was confused. Second young sir, do you still remember that time from 2 years ago? She suddenly began to smile, thinking back to how sorry she looked back when she first arrived in the capital. It really was funny. At that time, I had just become of age, and you were just a youth. In a small establishment of pleasure on the edge of Westlake, some brothel keeper fooled me into playing the pipa on stage, but in secret, she sold my innocence. After playing one song, that person wanted to drag me out, but it was fortunate that you saw the injustice and saved me, otherwise, right now, she paused for a moment, her smile a little melancholic, otherwise, right now, I might be about as clear as the mud beneath the lotus flowers. Gujoga's heart was a little moved. Thinking back to how daring he had been when he was a youth, he also began to smile. He felt that he was still too young at that time, but he had never regretted saving Yao Yu because she was always proper and understood propriety. She had never put him in a bad position. Aside from today. Right now, you are not mud. Rather, you are a lotus flower that is unblemished by mud. You don't seem like such an impatient person. What exactly happened? Blaming herself, Yao Yu shook her head. I am precisely such an impatient person. Second young sir, you are overestimating me too greatly. Even if I am not mud, I cannot become a lotus flower because I have selfish motives. Her selfish motives were undoubtedly related to that song about longing. Gujogu had always understood her feelings. I understand. Right now, it's not just my father, brothers, and little sister on that boat. There are also the eldest prince, the second prince, Princess Danyang, and a number of children from noble families. You making an appearance at such a time is truly something that should not have been done. Indeed, I should not have. Yao Yu took a deep breath. Her shoulder blades, like the pipa in her lap, were so thin that feelings of pity were aroused. After I arrived here, I knew that I had done something wrong that should not have been done, but I no longer have any room to turn back. There was someone who specifically came to tell me that you are currently discussing marriage and might marry Princess Danyang. When that time comes, a girl of low standing like me would find it hard to even see you once more. That's why I became panicked. I completely forgot all about the reasoning and clear-headedness that you taught me. She finally lowered the pipa in her lap. Doubling over, she covered her face and began to weep in sorrow. It was only now that she finally understood. Even if Gujogu married Princess Danyang, she would still have chances to go and see him. But now that she had come here, she had ruined his reputation. In the future, would she truly no longer be able to see him? Upon thinking of this, she was choked with sobs. Gujogu had always been one to cherish women. Seeing a beauty weep before him, his heart could not endure, and he ended up putting his hand on her back. He gently patted her on the back a couple times, his palms brushing against her shoulder blades. Her thin figure was quite pitiful. All right, it's fine. Father did not get mad. It was Yu Fu who dispelled the embarrassing scene. Young Miss Yu Fu. Yao Yu looked up slightly with her teary eyes. Looking at Gujogu with a slightly dumbfounded expression, she could not hide her joy. I thought that you had come to blame me and chase me away. I thought that you had come to tell me that you no longer wanted to see me. Gujogu helplessly shook his head and pulled her into his embrace with one hand. All right, don't cry. First, tell me, who was it that told you that I would be marrying Princess Danyang? You said that someone deliberately told Yao Yu that you would be getting married and told her to make an appearance at Westlake. After returning to the manor at night, Gu Jiugu told Gu Shubai about what Yao Yu had told him. This gave the two brothers something to discuss. Yes, she said that it was a foreign merchant who looked wealthy and respectable that told her this, and he said it with absolute certainty. In her panic, she took it as the truth and did not even get a clear answer for the client's name. It's another foreign merchant. Gu Shubai's brow slightly twitched, as he looked at him with a smile. Don't you think that this phrase sounds familiar? When Gu Jiugu had brought Yu Fu out to see the sights on the river, there had been a drunk guy who had tried to stir up trouble ended up. Upon questioning, he turned out to be an outsider. He had come to the capital to sell silk. He knew that aside from the imperial family, the ones in the capital who must not be offended were the members of Marquis Gu's manor. But he only caused a commotion because he did not realize that it was Gu Jiugu's group, resulting in Yu Fu falling into the water. After the drunk guy sobered up and found out that the one that he had offended was a son of Marquis Gu's manor, he looked as if he was about to wet himself out of fear. He did not appear to be lying. As for the person who had told Yao Yu about this, it also happened to be an outsider merchant. When the two coincidences were added together, they no longer appeared to be anything as simple as coincidences. Eldest brother, you mean to say that someone is using outsider merchants to deal with our Marquis Gu's manor? Those people don't understand matters in the capital. Even if we catch them, we aren't able to glean anything from them. As for the person behind the scenes, they're making use of them. Previously, they nearly hurt Yu Fu. This time, it was clear that they wanted to anger father and make Marquis Gu's manor the butt of all jokes. Gu Jiugu thought carefully about the motives behind this and found it hard to decipher. Right now, we don't have any evidence. It's enough that we know. We absolutely must not disclose it. Whether it be Miss Yao Yu or any other girl, you need to go and see them to ensure that this sort of thing does not happen again. Fortunately, Yu Fu was sharp today, otherwise, you would have been unable to escape from that disaster. Gu Shubai patted him on the shoulder, advising him to look out for himself. Yu Fu met Yao Yu last time and seemed to have a pretty good impression of her. This girl has a kind heart and will never look down on someone because of their standing. I heard that she even scolded third brother, causing him to become dejected for quite some time. Gu Shubai's brow raised slightly. When did this happen? It was around the Dragon Boat Festival. It was for the sake of an actor named Yu Guan. The hottest months quickly passed. With the arrival of the 5th month, the days became quite a bit cooler. The hottest months quickly passed. With the arrival of the 5th month, the days became quite a bit cooler. The palace sent someone out with a decree, inviting everyone from Marquis Gu's manor to enter the palace to participate in the Imperial Palace's banquet to celebrate the Mid-Autumn Festival. It even specifically invited Yu Fu. They heard that the eldest prince had praised Yu Fu quite a bit in front of Emperor Ning, saying that she was extremely smart and knew how to predict rainfall. Emperor Ning had been extremely troubled by the drought. Hearing that Yu Fu had such an ability, he became very interested in her. Yu Fu thought back to the trip to Westlake in the Imperial boat and felt that it would not be good to refuse Emperor Ning's goodwill, thus she agreed to attend the banquet. On the day of the banquet, Auntie Li dressed Yu Fu in a beautiful short jacket stitched with silver threads with a light yellow dress underneath. The short jacket had 2 layers with added cotton. Wearing it in this season, it was a little heavy. Young miss is someone who has fallen into the water. It would be better to wear a little more than to catch a cold. Though it was a little heavy, this could not compare to the beauty of the embroidered patterns. Yu Fu was only willing to wear it because of this. Young Miss hair is really pretty. It's so smooth and glossy that it resembles silk. When you become of age, you will be able to have your hair styled beautifully. Lian Zhu had an envious expression while slowly brushing Yu Fu's hair. If she was not paying attention, her inky black hair would slip from her hand like a waterfall. Yu Fu looked at herself in the mirror. Her dark and thick hair had already grown long enough to reach her waist. It could not compare with the older girls whose hair reached their ankles, but it was already much longer than when she was still in Immortal's Valley. My hair is growing longer and will soon be as long as Princess Danyang's hair, right? Lian Zhu and the others thought that Yu Fu thought of Princess Danyang because she would be going into the palace, thus they smiled and agreed. Yu Fu was satisfied and sat down in her chair, then heard Lian Zhu say, "The short jacket that young miss is wearing today has a white bottom and is a little plain. How about a more stylish hairstyle for today? This will keep you from looking too plain. Let's go with your plan." Lian Zhu's skill with styling hair was great. Ignoring the fact that her hands were a little plump, her fingers were very agile when working with hair. When Lian Zhu finished, she raised her head, and everyone let out sounds expressing their approval. "Wow, young Miss Hair is too pretty." Yao Lan stared fixedly at her, and Auntie Li revealed a doting smile. "With her hair like this, young Miss looks like Chang'e flying back to the Moon Palace with the jade hair. She's even prettier than a goddess." Lady in the Moon. Yu Fu had never seen the Lady in the Moon, thus she looked at the mirror. It turned out that Lian Zhu had tied her hair into 2 rings on top of her head. The long hair had been divided into 2 bundles on top of her head, then tied up. It made it look as if she was soaring. In the middle was a hoop of pure gold inlaid with white pearls. Golden tassels wrapped around the 2 rings of hair. It was a very exquisite look. Woof! Who knew when Pang Jiu had run inside? Facing Yu Fu, it quietly barked. It was both pitiful and adorable. A mischievous thought came to Yin Ling, as she placed Pang Jiu on Yu Fu's lap. Smiling, she clapped, "This is great. Deity Chang'e now has her jade hair." Everyone looked at Pang Jiu. Its fur was snow white, and it was obediently laying on Yu Fu's lap. Was this not the perfect image of the jade hair? They could not help but burst out laughing. Lian Zhu then fetched the rose rouge and applied a bit of it on her forehead with a brush. This made her look even more beautiful. "Young miss, you are young. It's not fitting for you to use makeup. Just having this bit on your forehead is already very pretty. Our young miss is a natural beauty and looks good no matter what." After she said this, she looked so proud, as if she was speaking about herself. The more Auntie Li looked at Yu Fu, the more she rejoiced. She could not help but sigh, "Our young miss was born beautiful and has a good personality and mood. When she grows up, there might be so many people asking for her hand in marriage that they'll flatten the door sill. But who knows just who will have the good luck of marrying our young miss? Everyone says to marry up, but there isn't any house in Eastern Ling with a higher standing than the Marquis Manor. There's only the imperial family. Does young miss like either the eldest prince or the second prince?" Yin Ling was quick to speak. While she was pouring the tea, she was exceptionally interested when it came to gossip. In the room, aside from Auntie Li, none of the girls had gotten married. When it came to the topic of marriage, they found it to be particularly interesting, and all of their faces turned slightly red. But the eldest prince and the second prince are no longer young. The eldest prince is even older than the eldest young sir. How can he possibly suit our young miss? Hearing them mention Gu Shubai, Yu Fu attentively listened while forgetting to let Pang Jiu down from her lap. But the eldest prince and the second prince have not yet found official wives. They only have secondary wives and concubines. Being a little older is nothing important. It isn't considered a big gap if they aren't over 10 years older. Not over 10 years. Yu Fu counted on her fingers, 20 minus 12 equals 8. That's not over 10 years. Lian Bai heard this and curiously asked, "Young miss, what are you muttering about? Who's 20? Ha! It's nothing. Elder brothers must be getting tired of waiting. Let's go to the main hall to see the head general. Saying this, she dragged Yalan along and trotted the entire way. The pendant hanging from her hip rang out with the sound of small silver bells. When they arrived at the main hall, Gu Shubai and the others were already there. Only Gu Hanemo and Gu Wenqing were not in the room, as Yu Fu looked around. Third brother and fourth brother, are they not going? You know your third brother's personality. He doesn't like interacting with people. Your fourth brother also said that he wanted to do some studying, not wanting to be defeated by you. Come here. Gu Huijiang sat at the top and looked at Yu Fu's clothes for today. He was very satisfied. Since we are going into the palace today, dressing a little more stylishly is best. The hair is quite nice, but the clothes are a little plain. Looking at Yu Fu's short jacket in the light, the patterns were hard to see if one did not look closely because of the silver thread on a white base. The beauty could only be seen if one looked closely. Gu Yi cheekily grinned and stepped forward to pinch her arm. In the end, he ended up pinching up a thick layer of fabric. Goodness, such thick clothes. It's only the middle of autumn. Who chose such thick clothes for you? Yu Fu looked around at everyone, and they were still wearing their summer clothes. She was the only one wearing a short jacket with added cotton. She could not help but feel dejected. Auntie Lee said that I have already fallen into the water and must not catch a cold, thus she had me wear this. Gu Shubai carefully watched as her little face slowly frowned. She looked like a little steamed bun that had just come out of the steamer. You're as beautiful as China and as lofty as a fairy. The clothes also make you look a little like the jade hair, all puffy and white. How festive. To be able to make white clothes look festive, Yu Fu might be the only one. Gu Huijiang burst out laughing and retrieved a pearl and jade necklace from a wooden platter on the table. He then personally put it on Yu Fu. This pearl and jade necklace had a golden thread that was soft and thin. On this thread were jewels of a variety of colors. They formed an image of a lotus that extended from her neck down to her chest, and this magnificence was filled with budhata. This is a 7-treasure necklace. It's a relic left behind by my late wife. Face, it's green. Yu Fu's magnificent little carriage noisily set out. In the carriage to her left and right were Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu, respectively. A moment earlier in front of the manor, the group had argued for a bit over who would accompany Yu Fu in the carriage. With the exception of rain or snow, everyone would usually set out together on horseback. However, Gu Yi acted spoiled and said that he wanted to ride in the carriage with Yu Fu. Wherever Gu Yi was, Gu Xiang naturally wanted to be. As such, the two wanted to ride in the carriage. Seeing this, Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu hastily went to stop this. You two spend all day studying and playing with Yu Fu. Is this not enough? Do you even need to be at her side when going out? In the end, the 2 spots in Yu Fu's carriage were somehow taken by Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu. This left Gu Yi stomping his feet in anger. If he had known that this would be the outcome, he would have just obediently ridden his horse. Why did he have to bring up riding in the carriage? This was definitely what Teacher Lin meant by making wedding clothes for others. How truly absurd. In the carriage, the two sat across from each other, and a feeling of enmity seemed to be stirring, or it could be that Gu Yi's open displeasure caused certain feelings that had been left unsaid to slowly rise to the surface. This sort of feeling left the two feeling very surprised. As for Yu Fu, who was caught in the middle, she did not notice a thing. With her head down, she was fiddling with the necklace. Eldest brother, this is something that belonged to your mother. Why do you think Head General would give this to me? This necklace looked more and more beautiful, especially the lotus that was made up of 7 different types of gems. It looked better every single time. Before Gu Shubai could speak, Gu Jogu rushed to say, "That's because of your identity. Right now, everyone in the capital knows about you. Father is worried that you would be looked down on by others, thus he gave it to you to wear. When others see something that belonged to mother, they won't dare to go against you." After all, Gu Huaijiang's feelings for his wife were known by all in Eastern Ling. Everyone knew just how much she meant. To give her treasured necklace to Yu Fu was the same as telling others that this child was one that he and his late wife recognized. This sort of honor might be something that a future daughter-in-law of Marquis Gu's manor would not even receive. Yu Fu nodded her head while only understanding a little and continued to feel the necklace. "Then I will definitely be careful to not damage it." She had never met Gu Huaijiang's deceased wife, but looking at Gu Shubai and the others, she knew that she was definitely a kind woman. Just like this necklace, there was an essence of Buddha in its magnificence. Gu Shubai looked up at him. Yu Fu had called out eldest brother, so why did he rush to answer her? Gu Jogu looked at him in delight. He disliked it when Yu Fu only called out for her eldest brother. It felt as though Gu Shubai was the only one in her eyes. "Second brother, the matter with Yao Yu that I discussed with you a few days ago, how is that going?" Gu Shubai suddenly felt the desire to banter and brought up the matter with Yao Yu to mock him. Sure enough, his bluster was reduced by a third. Yu Fu heard this familiar name and raised her head, saying, "Second brother, Miss Yao Yu is fine, right?" With her asking this, Gu Jogu felt even more uncomfortable. She's fine. What could happen to her? She had simply been provoked by someone. That's why an incident nearly occurred. There was never anything between the two of us, and even if someone did make a big deal out of it, I am not worried. After saying this, he slightly cleared his throat. He then lifted a corner of the carriage's curtain and took a look outside. Yu Fu said, "It's good as long as she's fine. The sound of her pipa is really nice, especially that song of longing." Gu Shubai could hardly hold back his laughter and used his sleeve to cover his mouth. Everyone says that the strings carry emotions, and only notes played with emotion are able to move people. Miss Yao Yu has feelings for second brother. That song of longing is most suited to her feelings, so it's natural that it sounds good. Gu Jogu looked out of the window, however, his ears picked up on every single word that Gu Shubai said, and he nearly coughed up a mouthful of blood. "Eldest brother, don't spout nonsense. How could Yao Yu have feelings for me, and if there are any feelings, they would be feelings of gratitude. They're feelings of sympathy for the musically inclined." Saying this, he unconsciously glanced in Yu Fu's direction. The second young sir of the Gu family, who was usually calm in matters of romance, had never felt so flustered over anything before. The more Gu Shubai heard, the more he wanted to laugh. Hitting the mark, he did not want to provoke Gu Jogu to prevent Gu Jogu from losing himself in front of Yu Fu. Who knew that Yu Fu would look up and earnestly say, "I feel that eldest brother is right. Miss Yao Yu likes second brother. I noticed it the first time that I met her." Now, Gu Jogu really wanted to cough up blood. "Yu Fu, listen to me explain. She and I..." Before he could say anything else, he ran out of things to say, and Yu Fu stared at him curiously. Gu Jogu himself also felt that he had spoken too rashly and rudely. Yu Fu was his little sister. What was he in such a rush to explain? This was a little too much like declaring that there was no silver buried in the ground. Seeing Gu Shubai hold back his laughter to the side, he committed this sight to heart. Yao Yu's status is unsuited to us. Even if she likes me, there can't be any results. As for eldest brother, I heard His Majesty already bring up marriage to father and wants to have Princess Danyang marry you. Before Yu Fu could even feel shocked, Gu Shubai casually said, "Second brother has heard wrong. Father has already refused, and His Majesty did not insist. This sort of rumor should not be trusted." Yu Fu secretly let out a sigh of relief. Though she tried to do it secretly, the other two present were experts and were very close to her. How could they fail to notice the sound of her breathing? PFT. Gu Shubai could not hold back his laughter, and Gu Jioga's face instantly turned green. Little Yu Fu, come and let sixth brother hold you. I've missed you to death. Little Yu Fu, come and let sixth brother hold you. I've missed you to death. The carriage stopped outside of the palace, and Gu Yi rushed over after dismounting his horse. However, Gu Shubai was the first to exit the carriage. From Marquis Gu's manor to the palace is no more than the length of the road. There's nothing closer than that. In just this short period of not seeing her, what is there to miss? Gu Yi miserably muttered, eldest brother, you don't understand. This is that saying of not seeing each other for one day is like 3 autumns apart. This short period of time is at least equivalent to 1 month. A day of not seeing one another is like 3 autumns apart. For this saying to have been brought out, was he implying something? How bold. Gu Shubai squinted at him. It turns out you've done quite well in your studies to use such idioms so appropriately. I will definitely find some time in the future to go and ask Teacher Lin about your studies. When Lin Fengmiao's name was brought up, Gui thought back to when he had been caned and the strong look that Teacher Lin had during those times. He shrank his neck in and did not dare say another word. Outside of the palace, there were quite a few officials getting out of their carriages with their family members. Seeing Gu Shubai come out of a carriage, they were a bit surprised. Could it be that the air of Marquis Gu's manor is ill or something? Why would he ride in a carriage? It's also such an elegant and beautiful carriage. It's clear that it was made for a girl to ride in. I haven't heard anything about an illness. Oh, look, why is second young Sir Gu also coming out from inside the carriage? What had happened to the sons of Marquis Gu's manor? Rather than their perfectly fine horses, why did they ride in a carriage made for a girl? Gu Jiogu exited the carriage and turned around, extending his hand. It seemed as though he was waiting to help someone out of the carriage. Gu Yi also hastily reached out, and there were now 4 hands reaching towards the carriage. Gu Shubai looked at his 3 younger brothers. Gu Jiogu pulled his hands back. He did not do it because he was afraid of Gu Shubai's power. Rather, it was Yu Fu's sigh earlier in the carriage that left him in a disadvantageous position. That action laid bare her inner feelings. Gu Xiang and Gu Yi did not know why Gu Jiogu had pulled his hand back. They simply thought that since he had already pulled back, the 2 younger could only obediently follow along. Quite a few people, whether near or far, saw this scene and felt quite curious. What sort of person was in the carriage that could have all of the young sirs of Marquis Gu's manor want to help them? This was truly too hard to believe. The carriage's curtain shifted slightly, and the gems hanging below made a soft ringing noise. The girl's hair flowed like a deity's, and the gold ring in her hair was gorgeous and luxurious. She lifted her head, revealing her pale and beautiful little face. When she smiled, a pair of charming dimples appeared. The dot of rouge on her forehead emphasized her beauty even more. She smiled and reached out her hand toward Gu Shubai, eldest brother. That pair of eyes that arced slightly when she smiled seemed to contain a fine wine that caused people's hearts to become enchanted. It told everyone that this was the pair of hands that she wished to hold. Gu Jioga's eyes dimmed slightly, while Gu Xiang and Gu Yi had more noticeable reactions, gathering around Yu Fu and accusing her of playing favorites. Little Yu Fu, could it be that I treat you poorly? I even got into a fight for you. Why don't you seem to like me? I really like sixth brother. Yu Fu looked at him with a smile. Just as Gu Yi's eyes were lighting up with joy, she held Gu Shubai's hand and walked in. Clean and efficient. Gu Shubai secretly praised her. This was the personality of someone who could accomplish great things. While they walked, the necklace that hung from her neck shone radiantly and attracted everyone's attention. The people observing nearby watched for a long time until they finally noticed something. Oh, that seems to be the treasured necklace belonging to Marquis Gu's wife. It's the one that he had consecrated at Hugwa Temple that year. Lord Marquis Gu was willing to give such a treasure to her. Exactly what sort of magical power did this young girl have that would make Gu Huaijiang like her so much? This is not strange. Even His Majesty granted her use of the imperial boat to play. What is there that can't be given to her? Regardless of whether or not she is his blood, just look at how Lord Marquis takes care of her. Even if she isn't his blood, we just need to treat her as if she is. During this time, whether it was members of the imperial family or the officials of the court, they would all warmly come up and greet the group upon seeing Gu Huaijiang. After greeting Gu Huaijiang, they did not head straight for Gu Shubai. Instead, they headed straight for her. Young Miss Yu Fu really is a goddess from the highest heavens and definitely will not lose to the eldest young sir's good looks. This necklace is really pretty and accentuates young Miss' beautiful skin. Gu Shubai was a man and did not like hearing others praise his good looks, but he maintained his polite smile. Yu Fu, however, happily accepted the praise. Thank you, this was given to me by Head General. After saying this, she looked over at Gu Huaijiang. The officials around them instantly had a realization. Sure enough, this was the treasured necklace belonging to Marquis Gu's wife. So that's how it is. Lord Marquis really dotes on young Miss Yu Fu. Right, young Miss Yu Fu, I previously told Lord Marquis to recommend an embroidery teacher to teach you embroidery. But young Miss did not like this, so I had her embroider a folding screen for young Miss and will send it to your manor tomorrow. How does that sound? If the treasured necklace had not been seen, this screen might not exist. The area slowly filled with people staring at the necklace hanging from Yu Fu's neck. As if she was a star and they were planets, every conversation was about her. It was this that proved Gu Huaijiang's thoughts to be accurate. Father, for the sake of making sure that Yu Fu did not suffer any misery, you even brought out mother's treasure. Were you willing to part with it? Gu Shubai secretly whispered this into Gu Huaijiang's ear while nobody was watching, and the latter slightly raised his eyebrow. From his dignified visage, a rare and faint desire to banter appeared. Your mother said long ago that this was meant for her and my daughter, or daughter-in-law. Gu Shubai was stunned. Daughter or daughter-in-law? Had he misunderstood something or was Gu Huaijiang truly implying something about him? In the imperial palace, the banquet had already begun. Because it was the mid-autumn holiday, the hall had a red carpet of fine velvet. To the two sides were pots of chrysanthemums in a variety of colors. Among there were even rare green chrysanthemums, which attracted many young misses from noble families, who were enjoying themselves quite a bit. They gathered around in a circle to admire them. All girls liked flowers, and Yu Fu was no exception, immediately noticing the radiant petals of the green chrysanthemums. It was truly amazing. Do you want to go and take a look? Gu Shubai was very understanding. He did not frequently interact with girls, however, he was always able to notice what Yu Fu wanted and needed. Yu Fu nodded, and Gu Huaijiang said, "You guys go ahead and take a look. His Majesty is about to arrive, so come back to be seated soon." Father, I'm going too. Gu Jiugu quickly followed along behind them, thus Gu Huaijiang also went along, sending Gu Xiang and Gui away. He knew his sons. They all liked to gather around Yu Fu. Sister Lu, look at how pretty this green chrysanthemum is. If one can be plucked and used as a hair ornament, that would be great. Some of the girls gathered around the green chrysanthemums were in the middle of a discussion, but they raised their heads in shock to see the figures of a few males walking over. They were actually the young sirs of Marquis Gu's manor. The girls, who had been giggling and chatting, instantly became bashful and no longer daring to speak freely. In their minds, they began to guess which one among them the young sirs of Marquis Gu's manor had come to see. They knew that today's imperial banquet would see the young sirs from all of the influential families in the capital in attendance, thus they all dressed up very properly. These young men could not possibly have come to see the flowers, right? Unexpectedly, they really had come to see the flowers. They had accompanied Yu Fu to come and see the flowers. Yu Fu, go ahead and take a look. We'll wait for you off to the side. All of the people gathered around the flowers were female, thus it was not ideal for Gu Shubai and the others to go over, thus they went off to the side to wait for her. Very quickly, the sons from other influential families started to come over to converse with them. Yu Fu walked up on her own. It was only after getting close that she found that the green of the petals and the green of the leaves were completely different. Such a vibrant green was rarely seen. Just like a large night-luminescent pearl, it radiated a green glow in the dark. Even Yu Fu's eyes contained a faint hint of green. That's right, it's really pretty. Yu Fu was completely focused on the flowers and did not notice the girls gathered around them. It was only now that they found that the sons of Marquis Gu's manor had come to accompany Yu Fu and not come looking for them. They had gotten happy over nothing. Oh, isn't that Yu Fu? The girl's familiar voice was a little bit shrill, and Yu Fu raised her head in confusion. Young Miss Liu. The one who had spoken was Lu Rui. Ever since finding out that Yu Fu had no blood relation to Marquis Gu's manor, the way that the two of them interacted had completely changed. One of them went from being polite and calling her young Miss Yu Fu to directly calling her by name, and the other went from intimately calling her sister Lu to young Miss Liu. Why have you also come to participate in the banquet? The tone of this question seemed to be directed at Yu Fu's background, implying that she was not suited to participating in the Mid-Autumn Festival's imperial banquet. Yu Fu always treated people with kindness, but she was not a fool. She could understand the mockery in the question, thus she just continued to look at the green chrysanthemums and maintained her usual tone. It was His Majesty who allowed me to come, saying that he wished to see me. His Majesty did. Lu Rui found this a little hard to believe. Taking in the way Yu Fu was dressed, she noted that the necklace on her neck was clearly exceptionally valuable. It seemed to reduce them to the same level as mere my servants. Where did you get this? Entering the palace while dressed so glamorously, I've really never seen such a thing. For people like us who frequently enter the palace, we don't like this sort of dress at all. When Yu Fu looked up, she saw her wearing a bright red silk dress embroidered with golden chrysanthemums, and it was so thin that the outline of her dudu could be seen. A gust of wind blew, and she seemed to be a bit cold, holding her arms. She was clearly sensitive to the cold, yet she still wore such thin clothes. Was it not just for the looks? Yet she had just ridiculed her own clothes. Her eyes that were as clear as water unconsciously revealed a hint of a smile. In the eyes of others, she was confident and calm, unlike a 12-year-old little girl. If it was them when they were 12, if someone had spoken to them like this, they would have begun crying by now. This little girl did not seem to be a naive little girl who had never experienced anything. They must not offend her so readily. One of the girls sneakily tugged on a corner of Lu Rui's clothes. You've said too much. Even if she is not related to Marquis Gu's manor by blood, she is the adopted daughter who is doted on by Lord Marquis Gu. Look at that treasured necklace that she is wearing. Even a daughter of the first wife like you could not possibly wear it. Speaking as you have, what will you do if the young sirs of the Gu family hear you? Lu Rui was unwilling to show any weakness and tugged her clothes free. She's just an adopted girl. Just how much can they dote on her? Could it be that Lord Marquis Gu would be willing to offend the daughter of a second-rank official just for her? With such thoughts laid bare, the other girls reached a tacit understanding and distanced themselves from Lu Ruyi, fearing that they would be implicated by her. Lu Ruyi saw this and began to panic. Subconsciously wanting to prove her own strength, she simply decided to reach out to grab Yu Fu's necklace. Such an exceptional item, I truly must take a look. How is it that I am unworthy of wearing it? Yu Fu was sharp and stepped back. She had learned just a bit of martial arts from Gu Hanmo and the others, thus she was a little more agile than normal people. This step back allowed her to avoid being grabbed. Lu Ruyi did not think that she would be able to dodge and ended up bumping into the green chrysanthemums, her entire head getting buried in the vase. She hastily raised her head, her hair filled with dirt and the fallen petals of the green chrysanthemum. She was in a sorry state, and when she ran her fingers through her hair, she found that it was quite wet. She looked at her fingers in shock, only now discovering that they had been dyed by the green chrysanthemums. The flowers before her had their petals scattered on the ground, and it had become a complete mess. This was bad. These were treasured green chrysanthemums brought in from the south. In the entire palace, there were only 2 vases of them. Young Miss Lu, what are you doing? Young Miss Lu, what are you doing? A eunuch stationed in the middle of the hall frantically shouted. His voice was shrill and instantly the attention of everyone inside the hall. Lu Ruyi looked all around. The girls who had been chatting happily with her were now distancing themselves from her. They were afraid of being implicated in her destruction of the green chrysanthemums. Young Miss Lu, you've destroyed His Majesty's treasured green chrysanthemums. I saw it with my own eyes. She suddenly panicked. How could that be possible? I only bumped into them a little. How could I have knocked off all of the petals? Lu Ruyi knew how much force she fell with, and it was not even remotely enough for such an outcome. Something had definitely happened. At that time, Yu Fu was the only one in front of her. She had definitely done something. Lu Ruyi reached out to grab her. Her hands were dyed green and resembled a forest monster from a picture book. She was truly horrifying. Just as her hand was about to dye Yu Fu's white jacket, a pair of hands reached out from the side and stopped her in midair. If you lay a single finger on Yu Fu, I will have you regret it for the rest of your life. Gu Shubai looked at her coldly. His eyes, which were usually full of kindness, were now exuding a coldness. He had been standing off to the side and had heard every word of what Lu Ruyi had said. He just found the setting to be ill-suited for an argument with a girl. He also wished to see how Yu Fu would deal with this sort of a provocative girl. Now that he saw her reach out with her dirty hands to grab Yu Fu, he could no longer hold back and moved to stop her. Earlier, it was because she avoided me that I fell into the flowers. She definitely saw that I wasn't moving very fast and could not possibly have made such a big mess. Yu Fu, don't you think so? She had just been mocking her earlier, but she was now hoping for her support. Lu Rui's shamelessness was really far above the average. Everyone looked at Yu Fu and saw her earnestly say, I only saw young Miss Lu run into the flowers, then the flowers ended up like this. Such pretty green chrysanthemums, it's such a pity. What do the other young misses think? The young misses who were accompanying Lu Ruyi froze, then looked at Gu Shubai's group behind Yu Fu, and they were all looking back at them with stern looks. The great efforts that they had put into their clothes today, what other reason could there be than to attract the attention of the young sirs of the Gu family? Now that they were being looked at, it was natural that they would do their best to leave a good impression on them. That's right, young Miss Yu Fu is right. Lu Rui's face turned as white as a sheet. She did not think that they would not help her. His Majesty has arrived. Emperor Ning walked in from outside the hall with a long procession of people following him. Among them were the eldest prince, the second prince, and Princess Danyang. "We greet your majesty." Everyone stood up to perform their salute. Emperor Ning noticed that there was a bit of a commotion in the hall and carefully looked over at the fallen petals of his treasured green chrysanthemums, and his eyebrow began to twitch uncontrollably. Which suicidal lunatic had reduced his beloved green chrysanthemums to such a state? He looked over at the people near the green chrysanthemum and quickly noticed a girl with dirt and green chrysanthemum petals in her hair. Both of her hands had also been dyed green. He immediately let out an angry snort and walked over. What happened here? How did our green chrysanthemums end up like this? The green chrysanthemums were without petals. All that remained was the center of the flower, and it looked quite comical. Yu Fu could not hold back and secretly began to laugh. Her sweet smile was noticed by Emperor Ning, and it significantly reduced his anger. "Replying to your majesty, it was young Miss Lu of Minister Lu's family who accidentally bumped into the green chrysanthemum while looking at them. She knocked off all of the petals." Lu Rui began to tremble. Emperor Ning noticed that it was the girl with mud in her hair, and he could no longer be bothered with looking at her any further. Instead, he was very interested in the girl who was secretly laughing. "You, raise your head, and let us take a look." Emperor Ning pointed toward the center of the hall, and everyone looked in that direction. There, they saw a little girl who had not finished growing, and she was standing next to Marquis Gu's heir. Gu Shubai reached out a hand and gently pushed her behind his back. It was only now that Yu Fu realized that Emperor Ning was pointing at her. Before she could hide her smile, she looked up. Her graceful face with the touch of red on her forehead perfectly resembled Chang'e floating loftily. To look like this at such an age combined with such a valuable necklace. Emperor Ning's eyes squinted slightly and pretended to not know who she was. With a slightly heavy voice, he said, "When we were speaking, you were secretly laughing. What were you laughing at?" Everyone began to whisper amongst themselves. His Majesty was truly angry today. He was even going to argue with a little girl who was laughing. Was it not clear that he was exceedingly angry? Gu Shubai was hesitant about whether or not he should help her out, but Yu Fu spoke up in her clear voice that rang out beautifully like a silver bell. "Replying to your Majesty said that the green chrysanthemums had ended up like this." This humble girl was standing next to the green chrysanthemums and unconsciously snuck a look. "I saw that it looked like a feather duster that had lost all of its feathers, and I could no longer hold back my laughter." PFT. The description of feather duster caused everyone present to burst out laughing. Looking again at the bare green chrysanthemums, did it not perfectly resemble a featherless duster? A child's words carried no harm. Emperor Ning's foul mood had also been dispelled by her words quite a bit. "Little girl, your words really are quite entertaining. Which family are you from? Why have we never seen you before?" Gu Huaijiang stood up at an opportune moment. "Your Majesty, this is this subject's adopted daughter, Yu Fu. Under your Majesty's instructions, I brought her into the palace." Sure enough, she was Yu Fu. Emperor Ning rejoiced, "So it was you. Yi Zhao said that you know how to predict rainfall. Sure enough, you are a smart and interesting girl." A middle-aged beautiful woman seated to his side saw this and smiled, warmly waving to Yu Fu. "Good girl, you are really beautiful. Quickly come and let this one take a look." Emperor Ning looked at her and ran his fingers through his beard. Make sure to destroy the evidence. Imperial consort Xian had always been good at picking up on Emperor Ning's feelings and knew that he had taken an interest in Yu Fu, thus she took the initiative to call her over. She truly had not spent over 2 decades at his side for nothing. She had also given birth to the eldest prince. She was even better at understanding him than Emperor Ning's most trusted aide. Yu Fu stepped forward on the red carpet of soft velvet. In front of the members of the imperial family, she was very steady. Even with her young age, she maintained a poised and dignified pace but also was not lacking in the gentleness of a young girl. Imperial consort Xian could not stop herself from nodding with a smile. This was a young girl who could withstand the pressure of large scenes. She ought to be born from some noble family and was definitely not just some girl from the wilderness. Good girl, look at your cheeks. They're so pretty. Your Majesty, look, doesn't she look a little like Princess Danyang from when she was little? Her hand passed by the necklace on Yufu's neck and paused for a moment, then brushed past it without leaving a trace. Yufu stood next to her very naturally, allowing her to continue with her praise. Imperial consort Xian had brought up Princess Danyang with good intentions. In her eyes, this both praised Yufu and praised Princess Danyang. One was Lord Marquis Gu's beloved adopted daughter, and the other was Emperor Ning's most beloved daughter. It was more than suitable to bring them up in the same breath. Emperor Ning, however, shook his head with a smile. Danyang was not as pretty as Yufu when she was little, nor was she as eloquent. In the end, Marquis Gu has good fortune. Such a beautiful daughter fell from the heavens, and it would be great if one fell next to us. These words were partially goodwill towards Gu Huaijiang and one partially his true feelings. He did indeed have a pretty good impression of Yufu. Good impressions are often made during the first meeting. This often hinged on a strange type of affinity. As for Yufu, she had this sort of ability that could have anyone who saw her feel a type of connection. They could not stop themselves from liking her. This was likely because she was born exceptionally beautiful. Princess Danyang was seated further down, and her heart was filled with displeasure. She was the princess. Among all of the girls in Eastern Ling, she was the noblest, yet Emperor Ning actually compared her to a girl of unclear origins, and he even said that she was not as beautiful as Yufu. It was all that old hag, imperial consort Xian, who led her father emperor to say those things. Something small and white flashed past her eyes and gave Princess Danyang a fright. Only then did she realize that the second prince was eating some seeds and had tossed one past her field of view to remind her to smile. He was relatively clear-minded. If Princess Danyang still wished to marry Gu Shubai, she could not afford to reveal the slightest bit of discontent towards Yufu. She hastily hid her unhappy expression and looked up with a smile and threw a playful tantrum at Emperor Ning. Father Emperor likes Yufu. Could it be that you no longer like this daughter? Daughter doesn't accept. Emperor Ning had a pampered daughter, and he would often chat and laugh with her to alleviate his stress. It would also allow him to spend his later years in comfort. He burst out laughing and allowed Yufu to return to her seat. He then turned to Gu Shubai's group and said, "You should also return to your seats. As for young Miss Liu, forget it. We are in a good mood today and will not blame you. But as a girl, you should be discreet in word and action. In the future, we hope to never see another person misbehave so badly." Lu Ruyi heard that he was in a good mood and thought that she had escaped this trial, but who knew that the latter half of Emperor Ning's message would nearly drop her to her knees. The meaning behind those words was that he no longer wished to see her. She could no longer enter the palace. Minister of the Ministry of Appointments, Lu Zhen, hastily stood up and expressed his thanks to Emperor Ning, then had people take Lu Ruyi out of the hall. He knew that this daughter of his had been ruined. Of the families in the capital with influence, none would want to take in a girl who could not enter the palace, much less a family like Marquis Gu's manor. Eldest brother, will young Miss Liu no longer be allowed into the palace? Yufu sat next to Gu Shubai and quietly asked him. It seemed that she had not considered things on a deeper level. Gu Shubai faintly agreed. Regardless of the setting, she spoke disrespectfully towards you. This is the outcome that she deserves. Even if His Majesty did not punish her today, I would not allow her to live happily. Yu Fu said, but that vase of green chrysanthemums, Gu Shubai gave her a look to cut her off, no longer allowing her to continue. He then pulled out something that reflected a silver light and secretly handed it to her. I know that you did it. You did very well, but you need to pay attention next time to destroy the evidence. The thing with the silver reflection was one of Yu Fu's silver needles. Lu Rui had indeed not fallen with enough force to knock off all of the petals. It only happened because Yu Fu threw out a needle. At that time, he had been standing at a distance of 10 paces and noticed Yu Fu's actions. That was why he did not step forward to help. Since she herself could act, there was no need for him to do anything unnecessary. Yu Fu thought for a bit but did not reach out to accept the silver needle. Eldest brother, you don't blame me for being vicious and no longer giving her a chance to enter the palace. Her no longer being able to enter the palace is a good thing. Think about the things that she said to you today. Such a frivolous and unreasonable person, if she ended up offending another noble person in the palace, it's possible that she would die without leaving a corpse behind. You not letting her enter the palace actually saved her life. Yu Fu smiled widely. It really was great that he was her eldest brother. Initially, she had been a little conflicted, wondering whether or not she had acted too severely in ruining Lu Rui's life. Having been comforted by Gu Shubai like this, she felt much better. I knew that you guys were standing nearby. Based on your martial abilities, you would definitely notice. If I didn't fight back, you would need to act for my sake. I did not want to implicate you guys. She had a resolute expression, her eyes glimmering while looking at Gu Shubai. Unswerving, every little thing blossomed in her eyes. Gu Shubai responded with a smile and reached out to pat her head. However, while Emperor Ning had been chatting about something, his name had suddenly been brought up. Marquis Gu, we recalled that your Shubai has already become of age this year. Jiogu is also 19, right? The children have grown up and should get married. Gu Shubai's hands froze, and he quickly looked toward Gu Huaijiang. Had he not said that he had already refused the matter of marriage? For His Majesty to bring up the matter of marriage in front of the members of the court and members of the imperial family, what were his intentions? Wait until Yu Fu is a little older. Gu Huaijiang's expression changed briefly before quickly returning to normal. Could it be that he had not been sufficiently clear with Emperor Ning the previous time? Or could it be that Emperor Ning was deeply envious of him and would insist on marrying Gu Shubai to Princess Danyang to feel at ease? Many thanks to your Majesty for the concern. My wife has been deceased for many years, and this subject has been busy fighting campaigns all across the country. Now that I have more spare time, I will definitely listen closely to my children and help them find wives that they like. Wives that they like. These words meant that Marquis Gu's manner did not care about the family circumstances of the daughters-in-law. All that mattered was whether or not the son liked her. This caused many of the people present to collapse. However, there were some girls with great beauty or remarkable abilities who rejoiced. If marriages were arranged by His Majesty based on family influence, they likely would not be considered by His Majesty. The one chosen for Gu Shubai would most likely have been Princess Danyang. Aside from the imperial family, who else would be worthy of Marquis Gu's manner? With Lord Marquis Gu having said this, they were the ones to have hope. When Princess Danyang heard this, her heart chilled, and she subconsciously looked in Gu Shubai's direction. However, she found that he was carefully peeling grapes for Yu Fu. Not only did he cleanly remove all of the skin from the grapes, but he also used a small silver chopstick to remove the seeds. Only then did he place it in Yu Fu's bowl. Was such meticulous work in serving someone something that the heir of the dignified Marquis Gu's manner should be doing? Her hand slightly clenched under the table, and her thin silk handkerchief was nearly torn in half. Emperor Ning lifted his eyelids and gave Gu Huaijiang a profound look. With a smile, he pointed at him. You, oh you, those words are telling us that we are not allowed to haphazardly name a wife. Isn't that right? These words were said with a great deal of ambiguity and made it impossible for others to tell whether he was happy or furious. Those present fell silent for a moment. By the time that Gu Huaijiang was about to stand up to apologize, Emperor Ning had begun laughing and winked at him. Don't worry. You already told us before. We remember. We can be considered Shu Bai's uncle. Can we not show some concern about his marriage? Shu Bai, if you have a girl that you are interested in, you must tell us. We will definitely sanction your marriage. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. They had thought that Emperor Ning intended to meddle with Marquis Gu's Manor's marriages. It turned out that he merely wanted to celebrate the marriage. Lord Marquis Gu did not want him to meddle in the marriage, yet he just wanted to handle the matter of sanctioning a marriage. He was eagerly kissing up to the cold Lord Marquis Gu. This scene was quite enviable to everyone else. To the other officials, who would not want the honor of having a marriage sanctioned by His Majesty. It was only him, Marquis Gu, yet His Majesty insisted on chasing after him and begging to sanction one of his child's marriages. Yes, if this subject has a girl of interest, I will definitely ask Your Majesty to sanction the marriage. Since he did not ask for a marriage to be sanctioned, that meant that he did not have a girl that he was interested in, right? Princess Danyang felt extremely embarrassed. Looking at the girls from noble families and their faces filled with joy, she felt even more displeased. Could it be that her feelings for Gu Shubai over the many years were so unworthy of being mentioned, and he was completely unwilling to even consider her? Could it be that he did not know just how much doing this would hurt her feelings? Your Majesty has been completely focused on the young sirs of Marquis Gu's manor, but this wife remembers that Prime Minister Yin's eldest young sir is the same age as the heir of Marquis Gu, right? Imperial Consort Xian had carefully noted Princess Danyang's expression and faintly smiled, guiding the conversation in Yin Shuo's direction. Yu Fu was eating grapes but raised her head when she heard the familiar name. Yin Shuo was currently sitting next to a middle-aged man with a sharp gaze. That person had bony features, and his face was without any extra flesh and looked very mean. Thinking about it, that must be Prime Minister Yin, the one that other officials in court nicknamed Hawk's Eyes. Sure enough, his eyes were as sharp as a hawk's. Behind them was a young and beautiful girl. It was probable that she was Yin Shuo's younger sister. She looked to be about the same age as Princess Danyang, but she was thin like a willow that would bend in the wind. She was not as round as Princess Danyang. Suddenly hearing Imperial Consort Xian's words, Yin Shuo froze, as Emperor Ning picked up on this topic. Right, if you did not bring it up, we would have forgotten. Prime Minister Yin, has your family's eldest son gotten engaged? Emperor Ning was quite entertained with his act as a matchmaker on this night. Thinking about it, it must be because all of the sons and daughters of the court's officials were present. He wanted to use this opportunity to produce a loving couple. This was also an age-old routine of these imperial banquets. Yin Yan remained silent for a moment, then said with some difficulty, replying to Your Majesty, one has not yet been decided. This child has been fully focused on studying, and he is determined to serve the court and the country. He is unwilling to find a wife and divide his focus, and this subject is helpless to do anything about it. These words conveyed the meaning that he also did not need Emperor Ning to prescribe a marriage. Yin Shuo looked at Yin Yan, his eyes showing that he did not understand the tone. Though he had never said such a thing, Yin Yan refusing a marriage on his behalf was a good thing. He casually picked up a wine cup to cover his expression, then looked across the hall. In the middle of Marquis Gu's manor's table, Yu Fu and Gu Shubai were intimately seated together. Who knew what they were saying, as they were laughing quite boisterously. His pupils slightly constricted. These siblings were not related by blood. To be so intimate, was it proper? Then looking over at Princess Danyang's expression, she was fiercely gritting her teeth to restrain herself. It was clear that she was thinking the same as herself. Emperor Ning ran his fingers through his beard but did not appear to be angry over Yin Yan's roundabout refusal. In truth, he had great hopes for Yin Shuo. He hoped that he would be able to take over Yin Yan's position and naturally did not want to casually choose a marriage for him. Eastern Ling's prime minister and generals did not get along. This was something that everyone in court knew. If the two families were connected, would they not be able to completely mend this divide? His eyes slowly drifted over towards Yu Fu, who was currently eating grapes. The charming little girl smiled so sweetly. But this matter would need to wait until Yu Fu grew up a little more to be brought up. Imperial Consort Xian's prize, look at how eager His Majesty is. The children should be given a chance to get acquainted to facilitate the discussion of marriage. Tonight is the celebration of the Mid-Autumn Festival. How about this, wife? Has my niece come and perform a dance for your Majesty? Imperial Consort Xian spoke slowly, then personally received a swan-necked wine kettle made of gold inlaid with precious gems and filled Emperor Ning's cup to around 70%. Allowing the girls of noble families who had not yet gotten married to perform was also a tradition of imperial banquets. Normally, after the performances came to an end, Emperor Ning might personally decide on a few marriages. This would both express his concern for his subjects and help stabilize the situation in court. Eastern Ling's empress died at a young age, and the members of the imperial harem viewed the eldest prince's birth mother, Imperial Consort Xian, as the highest rank. The important opening performance at this time would naturally end up falling to someone from Imperial Consort Xian's family. Emperor Ning nodded his head in satisfaction. Good, young Miss Wang is generous and dignified. Having her go first could not be more fitting. After saying this, a young girl dressed beautifully slowly stood up. She could not hide her joy and nervousness and bowed to Emperor Ning. This girl will go and get changed. Would your Majesty please wait a moment? Emperor Ning raised his cup and gestured to the officials present. Come, would all my beloved officials enjoy a cup to celebrate the Mid-Autumn Festival? A short while later, the sound of instruments began to fill the hall, and 2 rows of dancers came into the hall. They wore light yellow dresses that were tidy. Taking small steps, they came together as quickly as the tide moves. For a while, they could not tell where that young Miss Wang was. It was inevitable that everyone would feel curious. Following this, the dancers separated like a flower blossoming, revealing a bit of white at the center of the flower. It was young Miss Wang. Good. Emperor Ning applauded. If the group had not separated, we really would not have been able to see where young Miss Wang was. This dance was fresh and was far more interesting than the solo dances of the past. As long as your Majesty liked it. Imperial Consort Xian attentively poured more wine from the side. Young Miss Wang, who had been praised, revealed a smile and waved her flowing sleeves. To be able to receive His Majesty's praise, it was possible that young Miss Wang would be the only one to receive such a prize tonight, but one thing still remained uncertain. Would His Majesty decide to marry her to anyone? Imperial Consort Xian had already brought up the matter of Yin Shuo not having a wife. She also had young Miss Wang be the first to perform. Could it be? The second prince's gaze drifted in Yin Shuo's direction. Aside from the young sirs of Marquis Gu's manor, the eldest son of Prime Minister Yin was also a person in high demand. Emperor Ning wanted to cultivate him into someone who could replace Yin Yan. This was something that even a fool could recognize. Yin Shuo also lived up to his expectations. The way he dealt with people and handled matters was smoother and more likable than his father. There were some officials in court who disliked Yin Yan, but they would still like Yin Shuo. Earlier, Yin Yan had respectfully declined Emperor Ning, but what if Yin Shuo himself took an interest in young Miss Wang? Then things would not be great. Whoever married Imperial Consort Xian's niece would be in the same camp as the eldest prince. Fortunately, Yin Shuo was only watching the dance out of courtesy, and his gaze did not focus on young Miss Wang. Rather, he was not focused on anything. The second prince relaxed just a little, then turned his attention back to the family from Marquis Gu's manor. The dance that had been praised by Emperor Ning did not seem to be able to attract any of their attention. Instead, they were more focused on observing Yu Fu's first time into the palace and whether or not she could get accustomed to the atmosphere in the palace. He relaxed completely. Suddenly feeling someone tug at his sleeve, he tilted his head. Sure enough, he saw Princess Danyang giving him some looks. Second brother, you go and suggest to Father Emperor to let me perform too. I want to be the last to perform. Nonsense, you are a dignified princess. How can you perform along with these young misses? The second prince refused her. Every time there is an imperial banquet, these performances are shown. The young misses that have not gotten married are displaying their abilities to marry up. You are a princess. You should already be marrying the best. There's no need for such performances. Second brother. Princess Danyang anxiously said, what nonsense about the best. The one that is the best does not want me. Have you not noticed? I want to perform. I want him to know how beautiful I am. I want him to grovel beneath me. Second brother, this also stands to benefit you. You must help me. The second prince naturally knew who she was speaking of when she mentioned the best. He hesitated for a while before finally nodding. Fine, I will let you perform in the finale. You need to put on a good performance. Don't let me lose face. Don't worry, second brother. I have prepared this long in advance. You just need to suggest it. She already knew that Emperor Ning would reminisce about the past and bring up the matter of Gu Shubai's marriage. She had already prepared herself for this. If he wanted, it would naturally be fine. If he did not want to, she would need to bring out the performance that she had carefully prepared to reclaim his gaze. With the conclusion of young Miss Wang's performance, the sound of applause filled the hall. Gu Huaijiang smiled and looked at Yu Fu, fearing that she would be bored. Yu Fu, did you like young Miss Wang's dance? I liked it. A group of people dancing is far livelier than one person dancing. Everyone likes liveliness, and His Majesty also likes it. The normal dancers helped make young Miss Wang look like a goddess. Hearing Yu Fu's words, Gu Huaijiang nodded with a smile and did not say anything else. She was right. For young Miss Wang's dance to have received so much praise was not just a result of her own hard work. Rather, it was the hard work of all in the group. It was different from the dance performances from other young misses in past imperial banquets. Her act was both novel and lively, and it could have the normal dancers help elevate her own beauty. This sort of plan. Gu Huaijiang looked up and saw Imperial Consort Xian looking at young Miss Wang in satisfaction. He quickly retracted his gaze. He did not want to know about the secret plots and fights occurring in court, nor did he want to participate. He was even less interested in siding with any prince. The cup of grape wine from the western regions had a mellow and fragrant smell. In the candlelight of the imperial palace, it shone beautifully. Gu Huaijiang held the golden cup and looked at it a few times in the candlelight before downing half. After young Miss Wang, there were 7 other people who performed. Whether it be song or dance, calligraphy or painting, all of the performances were exceptional. It was immediately evident that they had practiced a great many times. These girls were all youthful and possessed great beauty. Most importantly, they had extraordinary backgrounds. It was only thanks to this that they would have this opportunity to perform in the imperial palace. Among them was Yin Shuo's younger sister, Yin Jiyao. She wore a green and white dress with wide sleeves, and paired with her slender waist, she resembled a soft-stem bulrush or a willow by the water. While she stood there and performed her song, she was beautiful beyond words. When the seventh person finished performing, the second prince suddenly stood up from his seat and bowed toward Emperor Ning. "Though daughter may be clumsy, I to perform to pray for a good autumn on Father Emperor's behalf and for our Eastern Ling to have bountiful harvests." In the past, a princess had never performed at an imperial banquet, and Emperor Ning hesitated for a moment. Princess Danyang also gave him a look. That look faintly seemed to drift in Gu Shubai's direction. Emperor Ning understood. Covering his mouth, he let out a faint sigh. "My Danyang has grown up and knows to show understanding for her father emperor. Since you have such intentions, you may begin." Princess Danyang's excuse was high-sounding, and there were no flaws to pick at. But there were some who were familiar with things and could guess the reason. Quietly whispering amongst themselves, and reading their lips, the name of Marquis Gu's heir appeared. Gu Shubai held his golden goblet and swept his gaze across the room, taking note of what the people present were discussing. "Many thanks, Father Emperor." Her performance was the zither song, Feng Qiu Huang. Legend said that Sima Xiangru used this to sway Zhuo Wenjun. It was thanks to this that the story of Wenjun's elopement exists. Eastern Ling favored Confucianism, therefore, they naturally favored the zither. The zither was a noble instrument, and improvements could be made through self-reflection. The strings could convey the kind feelings of one's heart. From Fushi's invention of the zither to Boya's era, the strings of the zither carried the earnest feelings of the noble. Compared to the zither, the performances by the young misses from earlier seemed to fall a tier below. There were basically no flaws in Princess Danyang's song. She sat in front of the zither, plucking and tugging at the strings. She was so practiced that there was no need to even look at the strings. This gave her an aura of being completely tuned into the performance, and it gave the performance a unique flavor. Her eyes would occasionally glance in Gu Shubai's direction, but the latter did not even open his eyes to look at her. Time and time again, this caused feelings of anxiety to well up inside her heart. Yu Fu slightly furrowed her brow. With her becoming anxious, the intent behind the song also changed. The melody that had been steady and reliable now had some unsteadiness brought about by the anxiety. Those unfamiliar with music could not tell, but those who were musically trained could hear it. Her state of mind was not tranquil. Was the reason that none dared to play this most refined zither is not just that it was difficult to control? Was it also difficult for people to hide their true feelings? Otherwise, the 7 young misses from noble families before her would have gone and done this first. The second prince thought to himself that this was not good. She was too impatient. If she did not perform, it would be the norm. However, if she was to lose face during this performance in the presence of these high-ranking officials and noble families, it would become a big problem. He quickly gave a look to the palace servants outside the hall. While the sound of the zither filled the air, a gust of wind suddenly blew into the hall, carrying the autumnal fragrance of rice flowers. Everyone looked out of the hall and saw a group of colorful butterflies flutter into the hall. Some of the butterflies gently landed on Princess Danyang's shoulder as if they had been drawn in by the sound of her music. The people in the hall were exceptionally surprised. This unexpected occurrence had completely covered up the flaws in her playing, and she was able to regain composure. The butterflies only came because the princess' music sounds so natural. This subject is thoroughly impressed by princess ability. The son of some family suddenly stood up and praised Princess Danyang's ability, which caused Emperor Ning to smile brightly. Everyone else hastily began to heap on the praise, completely ignoring the butterflies that had been scattered by the wind. They were like leaves that had fallen on an autumn day. Imperial Consort Xian's expression was a little ugly. She had been wanting to use tonight to put her niece's abilities on display, but who knew that all of the glory would be stolen away by Princess Danyang? A butterfly landed next to Gujyoga's foot. He was already a little inebriated and picked it up from the floor. The butterfly's wings were tattered. It quivered in his hand but could not fly no matter how hard it tried. Yu-Fu saw his movements and noticed the butterfly. She was instantly consumed with feelings of pity and carefully received the butterfly in her own hands. The butterfly is so pitiful. Gu Jiogu quietly scoffed and looked at Gu Shubai slightly jokingly. It's clear that this butterfly was raised by someone to be released at a specific moment. Why would any butterfly hurt itself like this and come to accompany the sound of music? These words were not at all tactful, and Gu Shubai immediately understood what he meant. His graceful brows slightly furrowed. To reduce these butterflies to such a sorry state for their own selfishness, this is the greatest offense to the zither. Truly playing the zither would be like Boya, who played a very refined, tall mountains and flowing water, or like Ji Kong, who played a very free and relaxed, Guangling San, at his execution, or like Lu Yushi, who played with an absolute peace of mind. It was not a tool to win favor with others. Princess Danyang was completely oblivious to the conversation between the brothers of the Gu family. She had been praised so much by others that she was rejoicing. It was only when she joyfully glanced over that she found that Gu Shubai was not looking at her. At her most glorious moment, why was he not watching? Gu Jiogu was talking to him about the matter of the butterflies. From Princess Danyang's angle, it looked as if Gu Shubai was looking at the butterfly in Yu-Fu's palm, thus a feeling of jealousy welled up. Of all the times that she could have Gu Shubai look at the butterfly, she had to do it now. Was this not clearly being done to her on purpose? Father Emperor! She suddenly cried out and pointed at Yu-Fu, saying, "All of the young misses present today have performed, but Sister Yu-Fu has not." The cacophony of praise coming from those seated below slowly died down. Yu-Fu had been pointed out by Princess Danyang and now resembled a fawn that had just run into a stranger. Her eyes were opened wide in surprise. Emperor Ning was stunned. Yu-Fu is young. How can she compare with you older girls, who are 16 and 17? She was only 12 years old. How could she perform in front of a hall full of aristocrats and not lose to the young misses who had painstakingly prepared for this? Moreover, with Princess Danyang's zither performance combined with the appearance of butterflies coming before, no matter how hard Yu-Fu tried in her performance, she would inevitably end up being laughed at. Emperor Ning wanted to protect Gu Huaijiang's honor and subconsciously refuted the suggestion. Father Emperor, don't underestimate Yu-Fu. She's really quite amazing. I heard Gu Yi say that Yu-Fu knows how to read, and even teacher Lin Fengmiao praises her for being smart. Father Emperor, how do you know that she doesn't have any talent for the zither, chess, calligraphy, or painting? Upon hearing his name brought up, Gu Yi had a defeated look. Where was there any desire from Princess Danyang to see Yu-Fu perform? She was clearly doing this for revenge. This was to get back at Gu Yi for his mockery. Oh no, our little Yu-Fu only learned to read and write. She hasn't learned anything else. But young Miss Jean has already displayed her calligraphy. She is 5 years older than little Yu-Fu and will have much more strength in her writing. Little Yu-Fu is unable to compare. Emperor Ning had initially wanted to refuse, but when he heard Princess Danyang's explanation, he believed that she had seen Yu-Fu's talent. Yu-Fu, you come and perform too. This is our first time seeing you and also wish to see what sort of talent you have. Yu-Fu's talent. Gu Huaijiang slightly lowered his head and thought to himself that she naturally did have a talent. It was also a talent that could shock everyone present. Detoxification, could this be considered a talent? This was not easy to show off. Had he known that they would encounter this sort of situation, he should have had Yu-Fu be like the young misses from other families, obediently learning some normal talents. Now, things were just great. Yu-Fu not knowing how to do anything was a result of his failure as a father. Now, she was to make a fool of herself in the imperial palace. To be the father of a daughter, why was it so hard? While he was worrying about what excuse he could use to refuse Emperor Ning, he saw that Yu-Fu had already stood up from her seat and obediently bowed. Understood, then this girl will borrow Princess Zither to put on a performance. What? She also wanted to play the zither. Even members of Marquis Gu's manor looked at her in concern. Princess Danyang was nearly unable to control her emotions, nearly letting out a sneer in front of everyone. She had thought that Yu-Fu was smart, but who knew that she was actually a complete moron? With her having just put on an exquisite performance, no matter what sort of performance Yu-Fu put on, she would not stand out. Moreover, she would be performing on the same zither as she did. She really was exceptionally foolish. Emperor Ning wanted to stop her, not wanting her to look too bad. The words reached his lips but could not come out. All right, you may begin. Yu-Fu sat down at the table where the zither rested and had already drawn out some quiet sounds. She had not yet finished growing. Like a little snowball, she sat in front of the zither, which made Lord Qin, who was seated in front of the zither, laugh. Her arms were already short, and her clothes were quite thick. The people could not help but wonder, would she even be able to reach out naturally? Even if she could, it would definitely affect the fluidity of her playing. She definitely would not do better than Princess Danyang. It seemed that Lord Marquis Gu's darling daughter would definitely be ruined and lose a great deal of face. Yu-Fu sat upright and closed her eyes, thinking back to what she had learned during her childhood. At the same time, she was sneakily stretching her muscles under her small jacket. She did not want to get locked up later on and be unable to move her arms. Sitting there with her eyes closed, she could hear the whispers and anticipation in the imperial hall. It seemed as though they were all waiting to laugh at her. Following this, those sounds gradually became more and more distant, more and more unclear. In her mind, all that remained was a calm lake. The night was dark, and the winds were strong. The surface of the lake began to ripple from the wind. The distant mountains appeared vast and mighty. An idea suddenly came to mind, and she opened her eyes that were as clear as a limpid spring in autumn. They were calm and profound. Such a solemn expression very rarely appeared on her face. It did not look like one that a 12-year-old child should have. The discussions of those seated gradually fell silent. Gu Huaijiang suddenly recalled that she also had such a solemn expression when detoxifying him. Though her hands were soft and immature, they were not lacking in grace, as she lifted one as if holding a silver needle. A soft and hollow sound then came from the string, natural and free. The zither that was too big for her did not seem to require much effort from her. On the contrary, she seemed very adept. Princess Danyang's face had already begun to turn pale just a few moments into the song. Why was it that she seemed so free when playing? This was clearly her first time playing on this zither, yet it felt as though she was the zither's owner. The strings and body of the zither were creating a beautiful sound. Gu Shubai was smiling brightly. Watching Yu-Fu's movements, he began to calm down. In the quiet night, the beautiful orchids of the valley quietly bloomed, and a gentle fragrance filled the beautiful landscape. Suddenly, the sound of the strings abruptly changed, like an owl letting out a sad cry, as it flew from a valley now devoid of orchids until it reached the distant mountains. Above the mountaintops, the moon, bright and round, hung in the dark blue sky. It illuminated the calm lake and vast mountains. Vast, solemn, majestic. Her fingers were becoming more and more nimble, and the strings now roared like thunder. The shocked spectators did not dare make another sound. She gradually approached the climax and simply closed her eyes. Going based on the feel of her fingers, she continued to play. Everything in her surroundings turned into a distant blur. At this moment, she was no longer sitting in Eastern Ling's imperial palace. Instead, she was seated beneath the vast moon. Gu Shubai also closed his eyes. When everything before him was dark, the sound of her music entered his heart even more clearly. In her heart, there were vast mountains, a bright moon, and a boundless sky. As for a normal girl, even if one played more excitedly, they would not be able to bring out the soul of the zither. Yet Yu Fu had done it. Her performance of Guan Shanyu had turned Princess Danyang's performance of Feng Qiu Huang into a joke. One came straight from the heart, while the other was hollow and shallow. It was the difference between clouds and mud. Princess Danyang's expression was particularly ugly. Suddenly, an amber Persian cat was seen walking into the hall. Who knew which member of the imperial harem had raised it for fun? A plan suddenly came to mind, and she gave a look to her servant, Diener. Ah, where did that cat come from? The spectators, who were immersed in Yu Fu's music as if it was a good meal or a fragrant wine, were instantly dragged back to reality by this shrill cry. With such a fright, the person playing the zither would surely have their state of mind disrupted. How about granting the title of county princess? Everyone managed to collect their thoughts and found that it was a beautiful Persian cat. It was immediately clear that it was being raised by someone in the palace. It was not worth getting so worked up. Their enthusiasm for the brilliant performance had been disturbed by the shout of a stupid palace maid. It was truly disappointing. Wait a moment, the song was still going without the slightest hiccup. Everyone looked over at Yu Fu in the middle in surprise. Her little body was seated casually, and she continued to pluck the strings with her eyes closed. It seemed as though she had not been disturbed by the exclamation. This tranquility did not appear to be an act. Rather, it came from inside. Not only were there no flaws in her execution, but she was also playing more and more freely. Like a cold wind that blew through the vast mountain range under the moonlight, it suddenly disappeared. Compared to a 12-year-old child, who could keep her composure, these officials and their families seated below appeared far more chaotic. Everyone began to return to their spots and found that the only one to have not been disturbed by that sudden shout was Gu Shubai. This heir to Marquis Gu's manor had civil and military skill, and he was accomplished in 4 scholarly arts. These people have known about this for quite some time. Seeing was many times better than hearing rumors, but his calmness made it clear that he was different from normal people. Princess Danyang stared at Yu Fu with her mouth slightly agape. How could this be? She was only 12 years old. How could she be so proficient at the zither? This was absolutely impossible. The eldest prince sat across from her and glanced at her with a smile. The second prince noticed the look in his eyes and fiercely tugged at Princess Danyang. Close your mouth. You're a dignified princess. How can you reveal an expression so unfitting for your position? Princess Danyang subconsciously obeyed. The lips that had lipstick applied were now tightly pressed together, however, tears began to well up in her eyes. Second brother, how could she? Since you've already lost, don't keep bringing it up. The second prince cut her off and glanced around. Waving his hand, he had Diener leave. He could not allow others to know that the palace maid who had let out that scream was one of Princess Danyang's people, otherwise, she would end up the biggest laughingstock in the capital. Because she was losing to a 12-year-old child at the zither, the dignified princess had used such underhanded tricks to try and distract her. Princess Danyang could afford to lose face like this, but he, the second prince, could not. The eldest prince noticed Diener hastily retreating and waved behind his back. His personal servant leaned forward and also departed from the hall after being given some instructions. Yu Fu's fingers finally stopped, and the strings once again fell silent. She slowly opened her eyes and found that everyone in the hall was staring at her. Among them, there were a few who were looking at her very warmly. Aside from her older brothers from Marquis Gu's manor, there was also one that came from Inshuo. That person, why was he staring at her like this? Yu Fu could not figure it out. Emperor Ning had already stood up from his seat and shook his head in admiration. Amazing, that performance was truly too amazing. Marquis Gu has the right idea when it comes to raising a daughter. Even we must blush in shame. Has the right idea when it comes to raising a daughter. Gu Huaijiang blushed in shame. This was also his first time finding out. Not only did Yu Fu know how to play the zither, but she played it this well. This was completely unrelated to his ability to raise a daughter. Gu Huaijiang had a warrior's disposition and wanted to immediately deny this, however, he noticed Yu Fu stealthily winking at him. He suddenly understood. He could not deny having taught Yu Fu the zither in front of so many people. If he did, Emperor Ning would definitely continue to ask about her background, which would stir unnecessary trouble. Your Majesty's praise is misplaced. Shu Bai taught Yu Fu to play the zither at home. This subject also did not think that she would be so smart and learn to play it in such a short period of time. This was not merely learning it. This was the pinnacle of the craft. It was supernatural. Yu Fu had been in the capital for less than half a year. If she was able to become so proficient in the zither in such a short span of time, what was she if not a prodigy? To be able to be the beloved daughter of Marquis Gu's manor, she truly was not ordinary. We absolutely must reward Yu Fu with something. Yu Fu, what do you want? How about we grant you the title of County Princess, what do you think? Once Emperor Ning had spoken, the entire hall fell silent. He was treating the title of County Princess as if it was something like a kitten or a puppy, something that could be rewarded to a little girl. To obtain the title of County Princess based on one's exceptional skill with the zither, no other example could be found in this world, right? The people quietly pondered this. It was possible that this was just an excuse offered up by Emperor Ning, and his true goal was to honor Marquis Gu's manor even more. They initially thought that Marquis Gu's manor had already reached the pinnacle of favor, but reality proved that as long as Emperor Ning wished, there was no limit. Your Majesty, we are asking Yu Fu. You stay silent. Emperor Ning interrupted Gu Huaijiang and continued to look at Yu Fu. How could a 12-year-old little girl possibly reject such a great honor? Everyone thought that Yu Fu would definitely accept. She, however, decisively shook her head and refused. Your Majesty, isn't the title of County Princess something that can only be granted to a daughter of the imperial family? I am a daughter of Marquis Gu's manor. You are mistaken. This was the first time that someone had dared to directly say that Emperor Ning was wrong to his face. Not only did Emperor Ning not get angry, but he actually began to laugh. He merely treated them as harmless words from a child. Sure enough, she is still a young girl. Even though she is young, she does not seek benefits. She is very knowledgeable. Marquis Gu, this daughter of yours has been raised well. It turned out that this so-called county princess was just a trick employed by Emperor Ning to test Yu Fu. He was testing this young girl from an uncertain background for Gu Huaijiang to see whether she was truly harmless or just pretending to be harmless in the pursuit of the position of young miss of Marquis Gu's manor. Now that he had ascertained that Yu Fu did not have any such ambitions, he felt at ease. To Eastern Ling, Marquis Gu's manor was unlike other houses. He could not allow someone from another country with ulterior motives sneak in. Gu Shubai lifted his gaze and looked over. The father and son of the Yin family were staring at Yu Fu like hawks staring at a sheep on an open plain. He and Gu Huaijiang exchanged a look and reached a tacit understanding. Emperor Ning's test of Yu Fu could not have happened for no reason. There must have been someone who had spoken badly of her in front of him. Completely distracted, Yu Fu returned to her seat, but Emperor Ning's expression suddenly changed, as he looked in Princess Danyang's direction. Just now, which palace maid was it that was shouting and being so improper? Princess Danyang shuddered and barely managed to maintain her composure, feigning absolute ignorance. That person had already been directed out by the second prince. With the hall being chaotic earlier, nobody would look closely at which palace maid it was. As long as she did not admit it, Emperor Ning would likely not know who it was. All of the palace maids in the hall dropped to their knees and silently endured Emperor Ning's wrath. However, nobody made a single sound. "Your Majesty, please spare us." It was not us servants who shouted. All of the palace maids said that they were not the ones to shout. However, Emperor Ning remembered the origin of that voice. It had come from near Princess Danyang. If it was not a palace maid who had shouted, could it be that she was the one who shouted? "Father Emperor, please calm down." The eldest prince suddenly stood up from his seat and said with a smile, "Father Emperor, son personally saw the palace maid who had shouted retreat. Likely figuring that she had caused trouble, she did not dare to linger inside the hole. Son has already sent someone to catch her. Would Father Emperor please be at ease?" He had seen Diener shout. Princess Danyang's heart was beating like a drum. Once Diener was caught, outsiders would definitely mock her for deliberately trying to sabotage Yu Fu. The eldest prince and the second prince were in direct competition, and she was the second prince's younger sister. The eldest prince would definitely be happy to see her make a fool of herself. This is more like it. Emperor Ning's expression improved quite a bit, pointing to the eldest prince and saying, "We can't be bothered to deal with it. Once you've caught the palace maid, you must severely punish her. You can't be lenient." "Yes, Father Emperor." The eldest prince did not say whom that palace maid served. He merely agreed and sat back down. The imperial banquet continued. It was just that tonight's focal point had been shifted from the earlier young misses to Yu Fu. Of the officials and madams who entered the palace, quite a few sent people to send their kind wishes and invite Yu Fu over to chat. Like the flower in a game of drum and flower, going around and meeting the various madams. Seeing that she was getting along well with the female guests, it was like looking at a child with their mother. One was doting, and the other was obedient and cute. By the time that Yu Fu was returned to Gu Huaijiang's side, she was smiling radiantly. Bringing her hands forward, she swayed them slightly. It was a feast for the eyes with many kinds of jewels, as many beautiful bracelets were hanging from her arms. "Head General, look!" Gu Huaijiang was dazed by this sight and was initially stunned. He then smiled and said, "Were these given to you by those madams? Do you remember who gave you which one?" He felt a little regretful. He should not have allowed Yu Fu to leave earlier, and he should have reminded her not to accept any gifts. Her performance tonight had stunned everyone present, and there were quite a few people with their sights set on her. Emperor Ning's test made him feel even more threatened. As for these madams who got along well with Yu Fu, they mostly represented their family's influence. With Yu Fu accepting their gifts, it meant that there was a tacit agreement. This agreement would disrupt the low profile that he had always maintained. But this could not be blamed on Yu Fu. She was still young. It was his fault as the father for being negligent. Gu Jiugu furrowed his brow and lowered his voice. "Yu Fu, you should discuss this with us next time before accepting things from others. Those madams gifting things to you is not truly because they like you. Instead, it's because they have something to request of father." Once these words came out, Yu Fu's smile momentarily faltered. "Second brother, am I really that unreliable of a person in your eyes?" Gu Jiugu was shocked and subconsciously looked at Gu Shubai. He maintained his handsome smile and looked completely relaxed when it came to Yu Fu. He was like Gu Xiang and Gu Yi, not at all worried that Yu Fu would do anything wrong. He was the only one. Fortunately, Yu Fu did not care and merely pointed at her hand and said, "These were all given to me by the young misses from other families, and I also gave them some things." She opened up her own pouch. Before setting out, it had been filled with colorful gems around the size of pigeon eggs. Now, all that remained was an amber cat's eye. If it was just some contact between young girls, it was completely unrelated to the officials. How is our little Yu Fu so smart, knowing that she can only accept gifts from young misses and knowing to give return gifts? Gu Shubai's voice was filled with a doting tone, and Gu Xiang gave him a dissatisfied look. "Eldest brother, little Yu Fu is how we call her. You can't copy us." Yu Fu already liked him the most, yet he was copying their pet name for Yu Fu. Gu Xiang and Gu Yi exchanged a look. At this moment, there was one word clearly in their eyes: shameless. Gu Shubai looked back at them with a smile, his eyes saying, "There are some things that are inconvenient to say here. I'll take good care of you two brats when we get back." The two brats hastily sat properly and obediently, no longer daring to complain about anything. When Lu Ruyi was bullying you earlier, those young misses did not help you, yet you were still willing to interact with them. Do you not feel sad about it? I don't. They also did not help young Miss Lu in bullying me. This is already enough. Gu Shubai and Yu Fu began whispering amongst themselves once more, leaving Gu Jiugu on his own to the side. His expression was a little sullen. It seemed as though he suddenly understood why Yu Fu liked their eldest brother the most. Just like when Yu Fu had been playing the zither and that palace maid had let out that wild scream, only Gu Shubai had remained entranced by the sound of the zither. This would be mutual appreciation. Gu Huaijiang glanced at him and revealed a doting smile that was rarely seen, patting him on the head. "Jiugu, pear blossom wine that was just brought out. Try some." He knew that Gu Jiugu loved drinking wine. Gu Jiugu unconsciously lifted his golden cup, and the full cup began to sway with his movements, nearly spilling the wine. Just look at how distracted he was. Be wary of the Yin family. It was only after the imperial banquet came to an end and everyone had returned to the manor that they let out a sigh of relief. "Little Yu Fu, I've been holding it in for a long time. Quickly tell us, who exactly did you learn to play the zither from?" Upon returning to the manor, Gu Yi circled tightly around Yu Fu while asking this question. It was not just him, as everyone, including Gu Huaijiang, wanted to know this. "I learned it from my master." Yu Fu replied with a half-truth. The truth behind it was that as a princess, she could begin learning the zither from a young age. This was not limited to the zither and included all of the refined things that all proper girls should learn. She had learned all of those things under strict guidance. But truly being able to grasp the emotions of the song was something that she had learned after being taught by Sun Qi. Everyone came to a sudden realization. The medical god of legends was an exceptional person, thus it was possible that he exceptionally skilled at the zither, just like the legendary Boya. Gu Shubai looked at her as if he had something on his mind. When her song had reached its climax, that style did indeed feel like one belonging to a hermit secluded in the mountains, but the style from the start clearly originated from the imperial palace. It was an ancient and noble grace. She had not told the truth. At the very least, she had not told the full truth. "Little Yu Fu, why didn't you tell us? When Princess Danyang called out your name, we were given quite the fright." To this moment, Gu Yi was still frightened. Yu Fu knowing how to play the zither was something that even the members of Marquis Gu's manor did not know. Princess Danyang definitely would not know, however, she deliberately had Yu Fu go and perform in front of so many people. Was this not done for the sake of troubling her? Yu Fu innocently said, "But you guys have never asked me." This was indeed true. They had always tacitly believed that Yu Fu did not know how to do anything. It was only after she said that she wished to learn to read that everyone found out how cultured she was. It was not their fault that these were Easternlings' customs. Rather, it was just that it was already amazing for young misses to be proficient in the four arts. Of course, they never thought that Yu Fu would already be proficient at the age of 12. Princess Danyang was absolutely infuriated by eldest brother. His Majesty hinted at eldest brother's marriage once more to father and was refused. Princess Danyang must be quite anxious to make use of this ploy. Poor Yu Fu, being pushed to the point of needing to show off. Gu Jiugu suddenly fell silent, finding the current situation to be very detrimental to Marquis Gu's manner. Princess Danyang has the heart of a young girl and is not cause for concern. It's just that from Yu Fu unexpectedly falling into the water to Yao Yu's appearance at West Lake, I keep feeling that there is someone watching our Marquis Gu's manner from the shadows. His Majesty's attitude tonight was also strange. It was indeed strange. It seemed as though he wanted to ingratiate himself with Marquis Gu's manner yet was also suspicious and envious of them. Everyone looked toward Gu Huaijiang. It had to be said that Gu Huaijiang, having spent multiple decades with him, understood Emperor Ning better than anyone else. He let out a sigh and wanted to avoid this topic. He did not want to reveal too much to the children. His Majesty is getting old. The conflict between the eldest prince and the second prince is getting more and more obvious. The generals and officials do not get along in court, and the people are uneasy. If someone was to provoke him, it is inevitable that he will become suspicious. Since ancient times, whenever a ruler is faced with a great general who commands large armies, when have they not boiled the hound after catching the hare? Gu Huaijiang had always kept a low profile and never flaunted his military achievements because he was considering this line of reasoning. I keep feeling that this can't be unrelated to the Prime Minister's manner. When Yu Fu fell into the water, I was present, and Yin Shuo's appearance was truly suspicious. Yu Fu is very young, yet His Majesty is suspicious of her. It is true that there was her performance tonight, but there are also signs of someone's meddling. Gu Shubai had always been thorough, and his suspicions of Yin Shuo were well reasoned, which lined up perfectly with what Gu Huaijiang was feeling. He nodded. Father was also thinking like this. It's just that Yin Shuo is even harder to predict than his father, yet His Majesty likes him very much and will likely assign him an important task. This important task was most likely to follow in his father's footsteps and have Yin Shuo take the role of replacing Prime Minister Yin. It's whatever with that Yin Shuo, but I think that the eldest prince and second prince are a little too diligent with their visits to our manor. The two don't train properly and always try to get close to Yu Fu. Gu Xiang let out a snort. He always felt that the two of them had bad designs for Yu Fu. He suddenly thought of something. Father, could it be because they frequently come to the manor that His Majesty is worried that you will help one of the princes commit? Gu Jiugu rushed to cover his mouth, not allowing him to finish his sentence. Gu Xiang then tried a few times to protest. That sound was quite similar to when Yu Fu's Pang Jiu became miserable. His barks would become sad whimpers. Gu Huaijiang glanced over at him. He understood Gu Xiang and Gu Yi's dispositions very well, and he did not have high hopes that they would mature overnight. On the contrary, he hoped that they and Yu Fu could continue to live their lives without a care in the world. There's no need to worry too much. I will find a chance to request that His Majesty take back my tiger tally. Between Prime Minister Yin and me, His Majesty trusts me a little more. After all, if he, Gu Huaijiang, wanted to commit treason and rebel, based on the soldiers under his command and his prestige in the military, it would have happened long ago. The most important thing was, when you guys run into Prime Minister Yin and his son in the future, just be a little careful, especially with Yin Shuo. Yes. After all important matters had been taken care of, Gui poked Yu Fu's arm. Then do you know how to embroider? Yes. Do you know how to dance? Yes. Do you know how to play chess? This was finally something that she should not know, right? Also yes. Too many things had happened during the imperial banquet for the members of Marquis Gu's manor to digest. It was because of this that nobody noticed that Gu Hanmo and Gu Wenqing did not return the previous night. In a place with as strict an upbringing as Marquis Gu's manor, this was truly unheard of. Oh no, third and fourth brother went out to drink floral wine last night and have not returned. When they return later, father will definitely beat them to death. Gu Hanmo and Gu Wenqing still had not returned, and Gu Yi was already making a huge fuss. He even went so far as to put on a skit with Gu Xiang displaying how they would plead for forgiveness. Little Yu Fu, you come up with some ideas too. Father listens to you the most. Your words will definitely have more weight than ours. The two of them were too immersed in their play, and Yao Lan had a confused expression from watching them. Sister Lian Bai, what is floral wine? The pure Yao Lan did not understand Gu Xiang's words and turned to ask Lian Bai. This left Lian Bai blushing furiously. Yu Fu heard her and hastily went to stop her. Don't listen to fifth brother and sixth brother's nonsense. With third brother's cold and expressionless face, how could he possibly go and drink floral wine? When Gu Xiang and Gu Yi heard her say this, they felt that it was quite reasonable. That's right. Then it must be fourth brother who took third brother out to drink floral wine. It's hard to believe. Fourth brother usually just stays in without making a sound, yet he's actually so bold. Yu Fu, young miss, third young sir and fourth young sir have returned and are now in the main hall. Yin Lin and Yin Shui, who had been sent out to inquire about the situation, had returned and reported this information while wheezing. Yu Fu hastily left the western wing. She wanted to go to the main hall to see. If things really were as Gu Xiang and Gu Yi had described, she would be able to calm Gu Huaijiang a little. Little Yu Fu, don't run so fast. Wait for us. The two followed along behind her. When they arrived outside the main hall's courtyard, they happened to run into Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu. They had also rushed over upon hearing the news. In the middle of the hall, Gu Hanmo and Gu Wenqing were kneeling on the ground with their backs to the main door. One had a very straight back and a cold face that seemed to be covered in a layer of frost. When he looked at Gu Wenqing, there seemed to be a faint hint of anger. The other one had their head slightly lowered to avoid his gaze. He did not have his usual gentle expression, and it seemed that he had done something wrong. Third brother, fourth brother, where did you two go last night? Gu Yi was the one with the least patience, immediately shouting after bursting into the room. Gu Huaijiang just happened to be coming in from a side room. Everyone quickly fell silent and moved to their seats. Speak, what happened last night? Gu Huaijiang sat down in his chair and quietly spoke with one hand resting on the armrest. His gentle tone carried a natural solemnness. It gave off an oppressive feeling and made people who kneeled before him feel like it was difficult to breathe. Gu Hanmo's expression did not change. After you left for the imperial palace, Sun was worried that fourth brother would be bored and went to find him. Who knew that he had secretly taken his horse out and left the manor? Sun followed him out of the city and found that he had gone to an unlicensed brothel outside the city. Unlicensed brothel. Gu Xiang and Gu Yi glanced at each other in shock. Who knew that their guess would be correct? Fourth brother really had gone to drink floral wine. Wenqing, what do you have to say? Gu Huaijiang did not rush to get angry. He understood his son. Gu Wenqing was not a licentious person. Gu Wenqing, who had kept his head down, finally raised his head. Father, what third brother said is true. Sun did indeed leave the city, but it was not an unlicensed brothel. Instead, I went to find Yu Guan. He is an actor that Sun saved in the past. He's someone from the troupe that came to our manor to perform during the Dragon Boat Festival. An actor from the troupe. It was a man. Gu inhaled sharply and shoved his hand into his mouth in horror. It turned out that fourth brother did not just go to drink floral wine, but he had also gone to pick up a man. Yu Guan was a familiar name. Yu Fu remembered this person. She had previously met him during the Dragon Boat Festival. In her memory, he was a person with a lithe and graceful body and a face that had a feminine prettiness. His voice was also sounded very nice. When Gu Hanamo had found them previously, he had been very unhappy, saying things like actors are of a lower class. Who knew that Gu Wenqing would be caught by him this time? Gu Huaijiang furrowed his brow. What were you looking for him for? Sun just wanted to go and drink with him and chat about opera and current events, nothing else. Yu Guan was previously a child of a government official's family. He only became an actor after his family fell to ruin. He has followed that troupe around and has seen the world. That's why Sun will occasionally go to chat with him. So that was the case. Gu Huaijiang said, you were just going to chat with him. Why not just tell your third brother before going out? Why act so secretive? Acting so furtively would naturally arouse suspicion. Gu Wenqing glanced over at Gu Hanamo, then lowered his head. Third brother doesn't like Yu Guan, saying that we as sons of a proper family should not associate with performers. Hearing him insult Yu Guan like this, Sun got angry and began to argue with him. This resulted in us missing the closing time of the city gates and could only rest outside the city. No wonder the two did not return the previous night. Gu Hanmo's personality was very resolute. He felt that performers were people of a lower class and would affect the unblemished reputation of Marquis Gu's manor. That was why he so resolutely opposed Gu Wenqing's association with Yu Guan. When it came to this, Gu Huaijiang still stood on Gu Hanmo's side after a bit of deliberation. There are people in court who are keeping a very close eye on our family, and they are anxious that they won't be able to find any problems. At this time, don't go and complicate matters. Your third brother is right. In the future, don't have associate with that performer. Though he said this, he did not punish Gu Wenqing. You can all go back. Leaving the main hall, the young ones gathered around Gu Wenqing and returned to his courtyard. They were likely going to comfort him, while the three older ones stayed behind. Third brother, this time, you were in the wrong. Fourth brother just wanted to go and chat with Yu Guan. Why bother with criticizing him so harshly? Gu Jiugu himself was a person with a flighty personality. He only became a little more reserved after Yu Fu arrived at the manor. It was natural that he felt that there was nothing wrong. Gu Hanamo coldly looked at him. Second brother would be best off looking after yourself first. I've disliked your Yao Yu or Yao Xing for quite some time, but there's nothing that I can do about you. Eldest brother, take good care of him. He gave Gu Shubai a look, then pulled out his sword and felt its weight before heading off to train once more. Gu Jiugu was gnashing his teeth behind him, that brat. Gu Huaijiang's thoughts, fourth brother, are you alright? The brats gathered in Gu Wenqing's courtyard and sat around to comfort him. Fourth brother, did third brother hit you? This was Gu Xiang. He was most concerned about practical matters. Fourth brother, did you really only go to chat with Yu Gu and nothing else? This was Gu Yi, and Gu Wenqing shot him a rarely seen glare. His eyes seemed to say get lost. Fourth brother, don't feel too down. Aside from third brother, we all feel that you did nothing wrong. This was Yu Fu. She knew that Gu Wenqing currently needed moral support more than anything else. He needed someone who could understand and support him. Gu Wenqing gratefully looked at her, as Zimi came in with some hot water for him to wipe his face. He received the face towel and slowly wiped his face, then suddenly let out a sigh. "Yu Fu, don't console me. Father has decided to no longer allow me to meet Yu Guan. He also feels that what I've done was wrong and should not have any associations with someone as lowly as a performer." That's not it. The head general is not that sort of a person. If he really felt that you had done something wrong, he would have had you punished. Isn't that right? Once these words came from Yu Fu, he could not help but pause. That's right. When I got some pastry in Yu Fu's hair, Father caned me 10 times. If Father really felt that you did something wrong, Father would have caned you at least 30 times. This was indeed the truth. Not only had he secretly gone to visit a performer, but he also did not return the previous night. To not punish such a grave mistake, it was clear what Gu Huaijiang truly felt. But Father has still decided that I am no longer permitted to continue seeing Yu Guan. That was the thing that he felt most miserable over. Head General has his reasons for doing things like this. Fourth brother, listen to what I'm about to tell you. Yu Fu told Gu Wenqing about the happenings from the imperial banquet. Gu Xiang and Gu Yi occasionally chimed in to add bits of information. The most important addition was about how stirring Yu Fu's performance had been. Gu Wenqing's expression finally revealed a bit of joy. So that was the case. If you say it like that, when the Prime Minister's manor finally stops keeping an eye on us, I will still have a chance to meet Yu Guan, right? That's right. But who knows just what strange ideas the father and son from the Prime Minister's manor are coming up with. Almost everyone knew that Eastern Ling's top general and Prime Minister did not get along. Prime Minister Yin was always trying to catch Gu Huaijiang making a mistake. He wanted to prove his achievements. It even went as far as colluding with enemies to commit treason. Gu Huaijiang had always just endured and let it go. He had always tried to treat him well, however, he could never melt that heart that was as cold as ice. Did you see that? There truly is a problem with that girl from an unclear background. In the study of the Prime Minister's manor, Yin Yen sat behind a heavy rosewood desk. His figure melded in with the shadows. Today's weather was overcast. Rays of light passed through the window but were not enough to illuminate the large study. Yin Shuo stood below a large bookcase, and a muffled grunt came from his throat. Girl from an unclear background. He did not particularly like it when others used these words to speak of Yu Fu, even if that person was his father. Yin Yan glanced up at him and felt that there was something a little off about him, but he could not figure out what this was exactly. Yu Fu is young, yet her skill with the zither could cleanly beat even Princess Danyang. This was definitely a skill that she has trained in since a young age. Marquis Gu said that she only began to learn from Gu Shubai half a year ago when she entered the capital. It truly is a preposterous idea. Seemingly realizing that his reply had been too lacking, Yin Shuo added this bit. Only then did Yin Yan nod his head in satisfaction. What you said is correct, but it's a little too unlikely. As a girl in the imperial family, and more importantly the princess born of His Majesty's Empress, Princess Danyang has been learning the zither since childhood. No matter how hard Yu Fu worked, she should not be able to beat Princess Danyang by that much at such a young age. Could it be that she is also a princess and has been learning the zither from a young age? After Yin Yan finished speaking, he himself wanted to laugh and let out a quiet chuckle. Who knew whether he was laughing at himself or laughing at Gu Huaijiang and Yu Fu? Yin Shuo faintly laughed. That's impossible. However, there could be some influence on learning from the family, or someone deliberately trained her from a young age. Those are both possible. You mean to say that Gu Huaijiang deliberately trained an adopted daughter with no blood relations to him to try and achieve some sort of goal? Yin Yan squinted his eyes and exuded a cold aura like a hawk. In the shadows, he was hard to figure out. He fell silent for a while, then slowly nodded his head, it could be that she had not been forced to perform by Princess Danyang and intended to make a grand show of her skills. No, Sun paid attention to the reactions of Marquis Gu's family. Their reactions at that time, Yin Shua carefully thought back and tried to find the best adjectives. They were extremely shocked and very worried. It seemed as though they did not want Yu Fu to perform. It also seemed as though they didn't know that she knew how to play the zither. Didn't know. If Gu Huaijiang didn't know that she knew how to play the zither, her background is even stranger. Could it be that she was born in Immortals Valley? Then where are her parents? If that's not the case, why are there no signs from a time before she entered Immortals Valley? With Yin Shua having said this matter was becoming even more confusing. But he still felt that this was more likely to have been something deliberately planned by Gu Huaijiang, using Yu Fu to achieve some sort of goal. What could that goal be? Have you heard that the eldest prince and the second prince have been frequently going to Marquis Gu's manor, and both seem to be rather close with her? The eldest prince and the second prince both wished to win over Gu Huaijiang. This was a secret that everyone tacitly understood. After all, Lord Marquis Gu had control over the army and was more than capable of shaking the foundations of Eastern Ling. Gaining his support was the same as success. But they never went to get close with the heir, Gu Shubai, or any of the other young sirs of Marquis Gu's manor. Why would they get close to Yu Fu? Yin Shua slightly furrowed his brow and had something of a bad feeling about this. He did not like Yu Fu having a group of men circling around her, especially those that were many years older than her. For some reason not long after the Mid-Autumn Festival, a letter came from Jinling saying that Gu Shubai and his brother's aunt, Madame Su, would be returning to the capital to visit the family. This Madame Su was the one whose birthday Gu Shubai had gone to celebrate when Yu Fu first arrived in the capital. Eldest sister heard that His Majesty wanted to talk about your marriages, thus she could not hold back and said that she would bring that Yunyan girl to come and take a look for you. He said you guys, but he was looking at Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu. This was unrelated to the younger ones. He then said to Yu Fu, she also knows about you. She said that she had been wanting to see you, and now she has the chance. With that girl Yunyan coming, you'll have a girl to keep you company, which puts me at ease. Yu Fu had occasionally heard Gu Xiang and the others bring this up. Their aunt, Madame Su, had been widowed for many years and had a daughter, Su Yunyan, who was 16 years old. Since Marquis Gu's manor had a style of raising sons strictly and doting on daughters, the eldest young Miss Su ended up becoming extremely pampered. When Gu Xiang and the others brought up Su Yunyan, their expressions were a little strange. It seemed that they did not like her very much. Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu both had people that they liked and were not at all interested in discussing marriage. Hearing that Madame Su would be coming to join in the liveliness, the two mysteriously furrowed their brows. What, are you unhappy that your aunt is coming? Gu Huaijiang shot a glare over, and the two relaxed their faces and forced out a smile. We're happy. It's natural that we're happy. If they said that they were unhappy, was that not just openly asking for a beating? Yu Fu was also very happy. Aside from the members of Marquis Gu's manor, Madame Su was the person closest to them. She naturally also wanted to meet her. This would finally have more of a family feel. Little Yu Fu, you're happy, but eldest brother and second brother will be suffering quite a bit. It might be the same for third brother. Third brother will be 18 this year too. Leaving the main hall, Gu Xiang and Gu Yi boisterously began to discuss their older brothers. Gu Wenqing stood behind them to help keep watch and ensure that Gu Shubai and the others did not hear their discussion. Yu Fu was originally elated to hear that Su Yunyan would be coming, as the two could play together. Hearing Gu Xiang say what he did, she no longer felt as happy. What if Madame Sue wanted to immediately make a decision on Gu Shubai's marriage and engage him to a girl that they did not know? How could that go well? Will Madame Sue force eldest brother to get married? She asked the most important question. Gu Wenqing noticed the concern on her little face and seemed to realize something. He faintly smiled but did not speak. It very well might happen. You don't know this, but Auntie really dotes on us brothers. She is also a widow, so what else is there to do but play matchmaker? Even more frighteningly, she previously brought up the idea with father of having Su Yunyan married to eldest brother. What? While Yu Fu walked along, she was nearly tripped up by some stones beneath her feet. Fortunately, Gu Xiang was alert and quick to act, catching her in time. Su Yunyan was Gu Shubai's cousin. How could she get married to him? Gu Xiang gave Gu Yi a shove. Be a little more objective when you speak. What do you mean by married to eldest brother? I remember Auntie saying that she wanted her to marry one of us. She never said that it had to be eldest brother. Gu Yi laughed deviously. If not to eldest brother, could it be you? You like her. Auntie really liked you, so she really might just have her marry you. Ha ha ha. Gu Xiang's face turned red from hearing this and angrily began to hit him. Let me give you and your filthy mouth a beating. You're the one that likes her. Bless our dear aunt, she wants to marry her off to you. The two began to fight on the pebble path, and Gu Wenqing helplessly shook his head. He then patted Yu Fu's shoulder. What's wrong? Weren't you really happy to hear that Auntie and Yunyan are coming? Why are you no longer happy now? Could it be because she was worried that Yunyan would get married to eldest brother? It's fine. I'm happy. It's just that I'm wondering what sort of gift I should give to Madame Su and Sister Yunyan. Yu Fu barely managed a smile and raised her head. However, her true feelings did not come out. Gu Huaijiang respected his eldest sister so much. How could she not welcome them? Marquis Gu's manor was also where Madame Su grew up. Moreover, the Gu family had 6 sons. Madame Su did not necessarily have her sights set on Gu Shubai. What was she worrying about now? But for some reason, when she heard that Princess Danyang wanted to marry Gu Shubai, she felt extremely unhappy and even began to dislike Princess Danyang. But if it was Gu Jiugu or Gu Hanemo getting married, Yu Fu thought for a bit and found that she did not seem to feel down. Why exactly was this? Gu Wenqing saw her tilt her head. He did not know what she was thinking, thus he gently tapped her head. What are you thinking about so deeply at such a young age? Is fourth brother allowed to know? He felt as though there was something on Yu Fu's mind. There was a secret, and that was why that person was quietly standing there without making a sound. Yu Fu raised her head and saw Gu Wenqing's gentle and handsome face. His kind eyes were watching her and waiting for her reply. There were some things that she instinctively could not say. There were some embarrassing things that were also a little strange. But if it was Gu Wenqing, it should probably be fine, right? On the day that she first set foot in Marquis Gu's manor, Gu Wenqing had smiled and extended his hand to invite her out to eat. From that moment, she knew that she could rely on him. Fourth brother, I have something to tell you, but don't tell anyone else. Drowning sorrows in alcohol in the thriving capital, there were bridges and flowing water, and there were buildings next to the river. Of the buildings next to the river, there were quite a few brothels. Throughout the streets, the scent of makeup could be smelled. In one of these streets, a 2-story building elegantly stood. Hanging from the balcony on the 2nd floor, was a cyan lantern. Mixed with the autumn colors, it looked like a nice piece of jade. The furnishings inside were very simple and subdued. In one room, there was a low bed, a side table, and a Baccarat tea set. In the spot next to the window, Gu Jiugu sat next to the window, his body casually splayed out on the couch. The cup of wine that he held exuded a cool fragrance. Tap tap like a spring rain hitting the roof, the sound of a girl's slow steps came from the stairs. Yao Yu walked up with some pastries and was dressed far more gorgeously than usual. There was also a hint of anger on her brow. Second young sir coming at such a critical moment, is there no worry that Yao Yu won't stir up some trouble for second young sir and ruin your reputation? What, even you are going to ask me to leave? Yao Yu covered her mouth and smiled. Though she said this, her actions were not at all ambiguous. Carefully arranging the exquisite pastries, she then glanced at him. She was using her actions to express how much she welcomed his arrival. It was not just welcoming. Ever since that moment at Westlake, Yao Yu had not dared to seek him out. She did not even dare to receive any guests. She just spent day after day sitting inside this small building. Waiting for him, yearning for him. Who knew that he really would end up coming? It's nothing that important. There are people in court who are envious of father's position. They're just spending their days keeping an eye on our Marquis Gu's manor. Me coming here to your place is nothing unbecoming. Even if it was, it could not affect father's situation. Yao Yu had followed Gu Jiugu for a few years and understood his personality. He seemed to be a free and unconstrained person. He was really quite protective when it came to the reputation of Marquis Gu's manor. He always took Marquis Gu's words to heart. This time, he had gone against the situation and come here. Upon arriving, he began to drink. There was definitely something making him unhappy. Since second young sir came today and asked specifically for Yao Yu, it wouldn't just be to have me watch you drink, right? One person drinking is to drown one's sorrows. Two people drinking together is more fun. She walked over to the bed with the wine kettle and sat down like Gu Jiugu, spreading her dress out like the wings of a butterfly. Come, drink. When the wine kettles were clinked together, the sound it made was crisp. The sweet smell filled the air, and a cold gust of wind blew in from the outside. There was a feeling that some freedom had been lost with the gust of wind. Gu Jiugu liked coming to find Yao Yu. It was not just because she played the pipa very well, but it was more so that she had a very kind and considerate personality. As long as he did not bring it up, she would not ask. Like this, the two got along very comfortably. After 3 rounds of drinking, he took advantage of the alcohol to voice his feelings, you know, of the people who spout nonsense to you, I am one of them. During the Mid-Autumn Festival's imperial banquet, His Majesty brought up the matter of my marriage. Fortunately, it was refused by father. Yao Yu's hand froze, and some wine dripped out from the corner of her mouth. She hastily used her sleeve to wipe it away. Father said that he wanted us to marry the girl that we like. He had never cared much for marrying according to social status, yet Auntie will be coming. She wants to speak up about eldest brothers and my marriage. It's really annoying. He did not find Madame Sue to be annoying. Instead, it was the discussion of marriage itself that he found extremely annoying. Yao Yu thought for a bit then said, is it because second young sir, you do not have a person that you like and are worried that Madame Sue would choose a young miss whom you do not like, for example, young Miss Sue? Is that right? Gu Jiugu lifted his head, his Adam's apple quivering. You have always understood my feelings. Even if I don't say anything, you still know. Yao Yu relaxed a little and revealed a slight smile. He did not have a person that he liked, then she was still the only girl at his side. This was enough. But you were not completely correct. I have a girl that I like, but she does not seem to like me. No, that's also not right. Due to the alcohol, his thoughts were becoming a little messy. It might be that she doesn't yet understand what it means to like in a romantic sense. It's not that she doesn't like me. It's more that she already likes someone else. Not understanding romantic feelings. Liking him but liking someone else more. Yao Yu suddenly figured something out and probed. Could it be that the girl's second young sir likes is young Miss Yufu? The wine kettle that Gu Jiugu was about to drink from froze in midair. In the end, it was depressingly put down. The room suddenly fell silent. You truly do know me best. Though he liked Yufu, it started out in the same way that an older brother would like a younger sister. It was only after that night when she had pushed herself to stop Gu Huaijiang from punishing him, despite her fever, that some unique feelings began to develop. After that, he slowly began to understand her more. It was only then that he found that she did not just possess the natural cuteness of a child, but she also had some things that most girls did not. She was natural and magnanimous. No matter who tried to curry favor with her, she would not become pampered or spoiled. Her heart was filled with kindness. This was even the case when it brought her no benefits, like with those maidservants. She even showed great care for that small puppy. That young girl's brightness and grace, like a bud in spring that had not yet blossomed, were slowly beginning to develop. He could already predict that she would grow into a beautiful flower in the near future, and she would attract a great number of butterflies. Just in front of him was a strong competitor. The person that she liked was the one she called eldest brother. Yao Yu put down her wine kettle and lowered her gaze. The corners of her lips curled up, but it was a smile that was filled with pain. Who best to marry? From Jinling to Linen was not too far. It was just a few days away along the waterway, and Madame Su and her daughter quickly arrived. On this day, Gu Huaijiang sent Qian, the steward who had been with him the longest, with Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu to receive them at Dutu. After the low-ranking official responsible for Dutu saw this situation, he knew that the seemingly normal trade boat actually had a madam from Marquis Gu's manor seated inside. He personally rushed to the front to help Madame Su and her daughter off the boat before rushing around to help carry the luggage. Madame Su was 3 years older than Gu Huaijiang. Because she was a widow, she wore a plain brown jacket with a cyan quilt wrapped around her. She had a very dignified and proper appearance. Comparatively, the girl in the pink dress next to her was tall and graceful. As for her accessories, she was not missing a single thing. She was dressed exceptionally gorgeously. Eldest brother, second brother. Seeing Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu, she cheerfully waved to them. Her way of addressing them was even more intimate, as she skipped out on calling them cousin. Outsiders even thought that she was a young miss of Marquis Gu's manor. Madame Su looked at her two nephews. They were tall and handsome, exceptionally so. She could not hide the look of praise in her eyes. Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu stepped forward to greet Madame Su. Auntie, father sent us and Steward Qi to receive you and younger cousin. Madame Su looked behind them, and Qian stepped forward while slightly bowed, greeting her respectfully. Steward Qi, don't be so courteous. You are someone who has been with our manor for a long time. You were already working for my father when I was still young. How could we have you personally come out to receive us? After saying this, she looked at Gu Shubai, her eyes carrying a plaintive look. Qian hastily explained, Madame Gu, please do not misunderstand. It was this old servant who wished to come. This old servant was very idle in the manor, and Lord Marquis wished to express his warmest welcomes, thus he sent this old face to receive you. It will also save you from needing to deal with unfamiliar faces. Only now did Madame Su smile, that Lord Marquis of yours, troubling you with coming out here. Could he not have sent Qizhou out? In this world, there was only one person who would dare to rebuke Gu Huaijiang in front of members of Marquis Gu's manor. That person would be Madame Su. Not long later, all of the luggage from the boat was neatly placed inside the carriages. Gu looked around. 2 large carriages had been filled, yet that was still not enough. It seems that Madame Sue was planning to stay for quite a long time. Madame Gu, young miss, all of the luggage has been packed. Please get in the carriage. Madame Sue nodded then, along with Su Yunyan, climbed into a carriage that Marquis Gu's manor had prepared. Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu rose their horses slightly ahead of the carriage. Along the way, other pedestrians would move out of the way, and this procession was quite grand. Su Yunyan sat in the spacious and resplendent carriage. Lifting the curtain and looking outside, she felt that her face was glowing more and more. Mother, I still like being in the capital more. Would it be fine if we lived here for a bit longer? Madame Su saw that she was looking out at the sights of the streets. Thinking that she liked the liveliness of the capital, she smiled and said, Our Jinling is a former capital city. It won't lose out to the capital city of linen when it comes to liveliness. Why do you like it here so much? It's not because of the liveliness. Su Yunyan pouted and said, After father passed away, when have we ever enjoyed such grandiosity when going out? There was also that low-ranking official in Du too. When they saw people from Marquis Gu's manor, their attitude immediately changed. Even if father was alive, his reputation was not as great as Marquis Gu's manor. The eldest son and second son of Marquis Gu's manor were personally creating a path, and the head steward had personally come to receive them. There was nothing more glorious than this. Su Yunyan had been pampered since she was young and fully enjoyed this sort of glory. Hearing her bring up the matter of her father's passing, Madame Su's eyes dimmed slightly before she helplessly shook her head. Oh I've spoiled you rotten. In Jinling, our Su family is one of the top 2 families. It's also an aristocratic family with a reputation for academics. As for you, it's fine if you weren't willing to study properly, yet you keep reaching for things that are beyond your grasp. You're even looking down on the Su family's nobility. Su Yunyan saw that she looked helpless against her and knew that she was unwilling to punish her. Smiling brightly, she leaned over and rested her head on Madame Su's lap. If it's nobility, aside from the imperial family, who can even compare with Marquis Gu's manor? Mother, how can this be considered reaching for something out of my grasp? Didn't you say that you wanted me to marry into Marquis Gu's manor? When she married into Marquis Gu's manor, she would enjoy that status fully. At that time, it could no longer be considered aiming too high and would just be something that should happen. Madame Su was doting but also helpless, tapping her on the forehead. Oh how old are you to still be acting spoiled? I have brought this up with your uncle, but he never agreed to it. He even refused when His Majesty tried, saying that he wanted his sons to marry the girls that they liked. If they don't like you, there's no point. Su Yunyan snorted and proudly raised her head. With my beauty, how could my cousins not like me? Moreover, even if uncle refused His Majesty, he might not refuse mother. Who doesn't know that uncle respects you, his eldest sister, the most? She began to massage Madame Su's legs to curry favor with her, and Madame Su faintly smiled, finding her words to be comforting. That's right. We grew up together. When we were young, father forced him to learn martial arts. Even when it was frigid or sweltering, he never stopped. There were times when he would be starved if the training was not going well. I was always the one to secretly bring him food. Oh, our dear Gu family, daughters were always doted on. Even if father knew that I was only feigning compliance, he never punished me, then isn't that fine? Su Yunyan seemed to have more confidence than Madame Su. Uncle will definitely agree to mother's suggestion. Mother, do you think it would be better for me to marry eldest brother or second brother? She snorted once more. Either way, I won't marry that sickly one. Any of the others is fine. A misunderstanding. The carriages that had gone to pick up Madame Sue arrived in front of Marquis Gu's manor. However, they found that there was a crowd of palace servants entering the manor while carrying treasures with bright yellow labels attached. The palace servants also had bright yellow labels on them. It was clear that His Majesty had granted Marquis Gu's manor another reward. Madame Sue and Su Yunyan had just arrived. Seeing this scene, they hastily retreated to avoid causing trouble. The people from Marquis Gu's manor, however, had long since become accustomed to this sight. It was only after Gu Shubai invited Madame Su inside that she began to walk forward with Su Yunyan. The palace servants brushed past them, and Su Yunyan's eyes landed on the treasures that they were carrying. A light flickered in her eyes. Sure enough, she had been right. In Jinling and in the Su manor, when had they ever seen His Majesty reward them with stuff? As for them, this was their first day in the capital, yet they saw this sort of a scene. The members of Marquis Gu's manor even looked completely accustomed to this. It could be seen just how aristocratic Marquis Gu's manor really was. It was on par with the imperial family. Eldest brother, is this a reward granted to uncle by His Majesty? Su Yunyan pointed at the treasures and asked Gu Shubai with joy and curiosity. One of the eunuchs who happened to be walking past heard this and respectfully stopped, bowing and saying, "Young miss, this was granted to you by His Majesty." Su Yunyan's eyes suddenly grew wide, not daring to believe what she had just heard. To me. Could it be that His Majesty knew that she would be entering the capital today, thus he specifically sent people to give her gifts? Madame Su was a little dumbfounded but heard the eunuch continue, "That's right, His Majesty said it himself. It's to be given to the young miss of Marquis Gu's manor." He had heard Su Yunyan address Gu Shubai as eldest brother. In the capital, was there anyone else who could refer to the eldest son of Marquis Gu's manor as eldest brother? It was clear that it was this young miss. Having received confirmation once more, Su Yunyan became elated and looked at Madame Su in a confused manner. "Mother, it was His Majesty who gave it to me. His Majesty hasn't even met you before. It must be to give face to your uncle that he would grant you with gifts." Madame Su naturally knew just how grand Marquis Gu's manor was in the capital, however, she never thought that it would be to such a degree. His Majesty would even grant such a grand gift to a cousin. Gu Huaijiang must have brought it up to the emperor before. "Young miss of Marquis Gu's manor." Gu Zhougu repeated this and slightly raised an eyebrow, looking toward Gu Shubai. Everyone in the capital knew that Marquis Gu's manor only had one young miss, and that was Yu Fu. This eunuch must have heard Su Yunyan call him eldest brother and mistook her for Yu Fu. That was why he said all of those nice things. Now, things were really quite great. Madame Su and Su Yunyan had both misunderstood. Gu Shubai looked at the mother and daughter and noted their looks of joy. He found it hard to bear, but if the misunderstanding was not cleared up, it might end up causing even more trouble. He gently cleared his throat and gritted his teeth, asking the eunuch, "Did you hear clearly? The one His Majesty is rewarding, is it young Miss Yu Fu or young Miss Su?" "Young Miss Su." The eunuch had never heard of any young Miss Su. He thought that Marquis Gu's manor only had Yu Fu as its only young miss. That was why he dared to chime in. Now that he had been given this shock, when he looked up, he found that the young miss before him did not seem to be the right age. Word about the young miss of Marquis Gu's manor had already spread around the capital. She was merely 12 years of age, yet her skills with the zither were exceptional, and her performance had dazzled everyone. How could it be a fully matured girl? This servant deserves to be punished. His Majesty instructed that the gifts be given to young Miss Yu Fu. This servant did not know that there was also a young Miss Su in Marquis Gu's manor. Please forgive this servant's mistake. The eunuch was so scared that he was on the verge of tears, and his head was hanging so low that it was nearly touching the ground. He hated himself for being so eager to speak up for someone else. If he had not been so quick to speak, would this misunderstanding have never happened? Now, things were just great. He had caused an incident. Su Yunyan's expression instantly turned ugly. Furrowing her brow and gritting her teeth, she fiercely clenched her handkerchief. Madame Su was stunned and embarrassingly frowned. She never thought that such a muddled situation would occur. She and Su Yunyan had completely forgotten about the existence of Yu Fu. Who knew that an adopted daughter would be so loved by the emperor that he would send people to reward her? Su Yunyan, a proper young miss related to the family, did not get anything, yet all of this had been given to her. Gu Shubai waved his hand. Those who did not know are not guilty. Madame Gu and my cousin both arrived today. It's normal that you would not recognize them. You may leave. Many thanks, eldest young sir. Many thanks, Madame Gu and young miss. The eunuch retreated while expressing his gratitude. Su Yunyan watched the palace servants pass by the main hall, then wrap around to a courtyard off to the side, and her chest tightened. Auntie, it was the eunuch who did not understand. Please don't argue with him. Father is still waiting in the main hall. This way, please. Gu Jogu also said, That's right, Auntie, that eunuch was ignorant. Please do not take it to heart. You are the noblest, young miss of this manor. Father has already had people tidy up the lotus courtyard where you resided before getting married. It looks brand new. In any case, Madame Su was someone who was born in Marca Gu's manor and had seen many trying experiences. Hearing Gu Joga's flattering words, she managed to regain her calm demeanor. Your father has been considerate. Every time that I come back to visit, he would always fix up Lotus Courtyard. When I stay there, it's like returning back to my youth. I feel very at ease. It seemed that the unhappiness from earlier had already passed. It was just that she suddenly stopped outside the main hall and looked over to where the group of palace servants was headed. I remember that the western wing was in that direction, right? The western wing was originally where Gu Huaijiang and his wife had intended for their daughter to live. Who knew that she would give birth to the twins, Gu Xiang and Gu Yi, then pass away from complications related to the birth? She had been unable to give birth to a daughter, thus the western wing had always been kept empty. Yes, that is where Yu Fu now resides. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.